welcome all to our meeting. Nice to see you all. And Mr. Duhaney, I think we're ready to go forward.
Okay. All right, so Mr. Mayor, members of council, the first briefing will be an overview of the Rudy Loop Park Master Plan. It will be presented by Michael Kirschman and also Chad Morris. The goal of this presentation is to seek council's concurrence on a few items before we move forward with design. All right, so go ahead, Michael.
Good afternoon, Mayor Dyer, Vice Mayor Wilson, members of council, Manager Duhaney, City Attorney Mark Stiles. Michael Kirschman here to follow up on the presentation you received 2 weeks ago on the reimagined Rudy Loop Park. We have a few decision points that we're going to need from council to move forward before we can go to construction drawings. We're going to go over those today, as well as review the park design with you, seek direction, and also perhaps talk about potential sponsorships at the end and seek direction there as well. So for a recap of the park design, and for the public who may be watching right now, this will be a brief recap of 2 weeks ago, but I would encourage them to watch the May 20th presentation by Clay Dills and Associates on the full presentation that really explains how we got to where we are in the extensive public input that created this master plan. So there is the draft master plan, an overall site looking straight down. You'll see it does show a parking structure there, but we'll talk about that in just a minute and various options for that area and parking. There's current site conditions of Rudy that we're all familiar with, and here is the reimagined Rudy Park if we move forward with the plan as is. Anchoring the south end of the boardwalk would be the beach village, as well as the iconic overlooks. There's a scene looking south along the boardwalk, again looking at the overlooks and access to the beaches and places to shower and rinse off, and the jetty walk that leads out. From above, looking down from the overlooks, that would be a view over the plaza and perhaps a farmer's market or other activities that could take place in that plaza out to the jetty walk. Moving along towards Rudy Inlet, you'll see the steps that lead down to the tide pool where kids and families can get close to nature and close to water. That was an image that was highly desired by the public during the planning process. The central kind of iconic water plaza, the grand entrance to the park as you enter, features a very unique spray ground feature. Again, over by Rudy, the steps leading down to the inlet. And then the sunset lawn looking back for the evening views along Rudy. One thing that doesn't show on this, but if you go back to the original plan, you'll see it, is up the shared path, there's also a skate plaza as well. I did see a couple comments online, people saying, wasn't there a skate park? There is a skate park in the plan, it's just not specifically called out on this image. You'll see the community lawn for large gatherings and events. The trail leading to the marina underneath the overpass. The event pavilion, which can be used for all types of events, indoor rentals, and a place to have lunch, grab a bite to eat, be in the shade. Those trees would not be immediate. They would take time to grow, just a note to everybody. And again, there is the master plan as it was presented 2 weeks ago. A quick review of the costs associated with this project. Just to review, these costs come from Sussex. They were one of the sub-consultants on the design team. They looked at this project as if we were bidding it. So they got real prices from real contractors to develop these costs. Also included in these costs is a 2-year escalator. So even if we were to move forward now, it would probably be around 2 years before we got to bid for construction. That's how long it will take to get the construction drawings done and to go through the bidding process. So it factors into, here's what this would cost 2 years from now going out to bid. 2 different options, one with a parking garage, one without. You'll see just over $70 million for the park with a parking deck. That parking deck was going to be unique, rooftop restaurant, perhaps commercial on the ground floor. Those activities could support the park operations through a revenue source. Without the parking garage, though, the price drops considerably. roughly $30 million, down to just shy of $43 million for the entire park construction, putting in surface parking only. So one of the decision points that need to be made is whether we go with a parking deck or not. Staff are assuming, based on the budget at hand, that we'd be moving forward with surface parking only, although certainly we'd like to have concurrence from council on that decision. And this is what the park would look like with surface parking, roughly 400 parking spaces available on site. There's an image of the parking structure, but in lieu of that image, just imagine it would all be surface parking. And of course, the city at any time in the future could come back and add a parking deck at a future date if they desired. We do have some existing parking lease agreements within the site as well. There are 3 of those. They actually expire in 2 years. Staff was also assuming that all of these leases would be expired because those spaces will be necessary for the park. And you can see where those are on this diagram. We have had an interest, as we talked about 2 weeks ago, from the private sector, philanthropic groups, on potentially donating towards this project. There are numerous features which could have naming rights associated with them, whether that's the central water feature, whether that's the iconic public art that would be there, whether that's the play structures. It is our intention to, once the park design is approved and we're moving forward with construction drawings, if the council gives a green light to staff, we would come back to you in the very near future with a plan for pursuing philanthropic donations and sponsorships for the park project. We would develop basically an itemized list of features ranging from a few $100,000 to multiple millions of dollars for various amenities within the park for interested individuals and groups that wanted to sponsor them. Moving on to the operating budget. This was done by Biederman Associates, another subconsultant on the team. This is what they do for a living. They also run Bryant Park and Central Park. We believe, once fully built out and fully programmed, that the park can be self-sustaining and earned revenues for daily maintenance and operations. So Biederman Associates estimates anywhere from $1.5 to $2 million per year in various revenues. That is people sponsoring concerts. That is a percentage of sales of food and beverage in the park. That is for active programs with fees in the park. Many programs will be free. Some will have a fee. Numerous ways to make revenue in a park of this magnitude. They believe it could easily bring in up to $2 million per year, conservatively. And they believe the park will have an operating budget of about $1.5 million per year for all the daily maintenance. Another decision point that needs to be discussed is there is an internal boundary with a VBDA parcel right in the middle of the park where the parking deck or the surface parking would go, and we'll need direction on how to rectify this. So if you look on this map, the VBDA parcel is right here, and that's where the parking would go. It is staff's recommendation that the entire area that would become the future surface parking lot be transferred to the VBDA for their ownership in the future. And that way, if a parking deck is ever built on site, it creates numerous efficiencies. So next steps. Once the final design is approved by council, we would move to construction drawings. That will likely take around 1.5 years to complete. You need those construction drawings before you can go out to bid. It takes quite a few months to go through the bidding process, so we're looking about 2 years from now, actually going at the bid, awarding a construction bid to a vendor, and then likely 2 years to complete. So from today, if approved, likely a 4-year time frame, if the stars align, to actually cutting a ribbon on the new Rudy Park. So for today, we have a couple questions, and we're seeking guidance on a few items. One is, how does council feel about the final design of the park? Are there questions? Are there concerns? 2, are we moving forward with just surface parking only? 3, thoughts on the VBDA parcel inside, and would you like staff to pursue sponsorships and donations for the project? And with that, we'll open it up for questions.
Hey, Rosemary.
Go on, can you get that back up there?
Well, this is an exciting day to get to this point. You think about great parks across this country. You look at Millennial Park and what it's done for Chicago. And this park was not only going to be wonderful for our locals, but also for our visitors, where people are going to want to come here to see this new fantastic world-class park. And I also believe that you bring the locals down here too, they're going to say, let's do a little shopping, or let's go eat in the restaurant. And I think it's really going to help our local oceanfront businesses, bringing the locals down here to shop and eat. Especially we women, we like to shop. I think I mentioned a couple of months ago that I think we should just go for the surface parking plan for now. I mean, besides saving $30 million, they have miraculously found a way to have even more parking that's there now. So, which we'll do besides the parking, but also will give a staging area if we need it for future things that happen down that way. So I think that that's kind of a no-brainer. If sometime in the future we really see the need for the parking garage, we can do that. What else are we supposed to answer?
I'm going to get to that slide right now. I apologize.
It seems kind of crazy to have part of it split up with the VBDA and us. So I think having that parking lot all owned by the VBDA is probably a really wise thing to do to erase that property line. Sponsorships. Most of you weren't here when we built the Sandler. Barbara was here and Bobby was here. And at that time, the city put up $35 million, and I think the state gave us $2 million, but it wasn't going to be enough. So we developed a committee, and they raised $15 million for the Sandler. That was 20 years ago. We did that 20 years ago for a building where all the naming opportunities, except for the building itself, are on the inside. Think what we can do with this park. You've got 14 million visitors coming every year, plus our locals are going to be coming down, and it's all going to be free to walk around and see. And people are already starting, companies are already starting to want to be part of this. So I don't think there's going to be any problem raising at least $15 million in sponsorships. So if you bring in the 42 million and then subtract another 15, we'll be able to do this park for about $27 million, which I think would be incredible. And it's going to be a very big draw for our locals and our visitors alike. Most of you know I live down the boardwalk, and I'm always talking to the visitors. And I talked to this lady this morning, and she comes and she stays at the Spring Hill every year because she just loves it. And there's going to be more and more people who are going to want to come to do that, to come and see this world-class park. So those are, anyway, that's my 2 cents worth.
Anybody else? Worth?
Thank you, Mayor Dyer. Thank you, Mr. Kirschman. Thank you, Vice Mayor, for championing this project. And I think it's a beautiful project. I am hearing from the community about the cost, and we just passed the budget. And I want to see this park go forth. We still have to reimagine Atlantic Avenue. We still have to find some more parking at the resort. We still have the aquarium out there. We have some potential sports activities. And I'm not saying we shouldn't necessarily move forward, but I wonder if we ought to pick a number and try to meet that. Maybe you said 27 million, not to second guess you. I'm just bringing this up for discussion. If it's 27 million, it's 27 million, but can we go with 15 or cut it back some more? It's easy for me to say that, but I'm just bringing it up as an idea. I don't want to, and that maybe phase the park or cut back something. And I know I agree with putting in a lot of contingency for the future, and I'm not trying to second guess again, but I'm just bringing it up because there is some other potential things at the resort that we ought to look at. And if the will of the body is to go with the 42, and I think we ought to phase the parking, so certainly surface parking. And I also think we ought to go forth and try to find philanthropic donations.
Okay, Barbara?
How many presentations have we made to the public, and what are we hearing back?
Chad?
So for this project, we've had many public conversations.
Since we've had this plan, I mean, I know we had a very extensive public input up to this point, but since we had this plan for people to comment on, how many presentations have been made and what are we hearing?
Yep. Since the plan's been developed, it was shared with council on May 20th, so it's only been out there for 2 weeks. So we haven't gone out and presented this to others. We did have a presentation with PDRC this morning, and that's been basically the only presentation we've gone out. So we don't have, we hear some things and a lot of good things about the project and the final design, and then there's also the people that are not as excited about it. But for the most part, what we're hearing is pretty positive. But we have not gone out to the groups and share the plan like we did prior.
I can just say one thing. This is a very unscientific study, but when the city of Virginia Beach posted this on their Facebook page, I've been tracking that post. And if there's one thing about social media, you can track reactions. And so I counted up how many people hit the love or like or oh wow icon versus the angry icon. It's 90% to 10%. So of those people who have seen it and it's been seen, you'd have to have the Central Communications talk about the reach, and they could do the analytics on the post and how many shares there was and how many tens of thousands of people have seen the final design. If you just look at the reactions online, it is overwhelmingly positive, over 90%, which is what we saw actually during the public input process too, in terms of feedback from the public. So it kind of matches what we saw along the way.
Cash.
Director Kirschman, thank you very much. This is one of the places in our city that is just really, really special to a lot of people, and it's so unique. So, just hitting on the first bullet up there with the design. I was down at Jackalope this weekend, which was awesome, by the way, and ran into somebody who just had a lot to offer, and say about Rudy Park, and one of the things she said was, just keep it as it is, and we've heard that online and from folks, and I think a really important thing to emphasize as we go about this is, the landscape plan, the shoreline enhancement, like what you're doing. I mean, what there is right now is it's not taking away access, it's enhancing access is what this is really about. And I'd love to see a little bit more drilled down kind of landscape and kind of shoreline plan, so that we can convince people who are taking care of this precious asset. The team that they assembled, like, the environmental people, the construction validation piece, the ROI piece, I mean, all of that, it was extremely impressive, and they did a great job. And I think the parking really ought to be informed by what our regional needs are. I mean, we got that map with the circles with the red, and I think we just got to kind of go about that strategically. And if we can leave that open for, alongside private investment, that'd be great, and as far as philanthropic donations go, I know that there are people who would love to put their name beside something as iconic as what this could be. And lastly, the VBDA, I would love for us as a council just separately to have a better appreciation for how the VBDA can help us and what they do for us in terms of redevelopment or things of this nature, so that the public can also better understand the flexibility that using the VBDA can provide us in the right circumstance.
Okay, Cash.
So thank you for the presentation. Where I live at is Salem High, around that area, District 7. And so when I was learning about the oceanfront, I had a lot of information that was provided to me by the Hotel Motel Association. And so I think it would be very wise when we talk about public comments that, I don't know if you've done that already, but that would be excellent to get their feedback, since they were able to fill in the gaps for me, because when I drive to the oceanfront, it's a drive for me. And what better source of information from those who are there on the oceanfront, providing a service to our residents and our tourism every day. So that would be my recommendation. Other than that, I love the design. I love what you're doing, Director, and I look forward to seeing the result of that.
Okay, Amelia and then Hutch.
Thank you again, Michael and Chad. I was over at the Virginia Transit Association conference this past 28th, 29th, and this was brought up. So a lot of people are seeing the design, but what they mention is, are we going to have the trolley or the train come, the bus come along there? Because people coming in. So that's one thing I would like to see, especially having that instead of congestion.
I can only imagine this would be a stop along the transit.
And then the second thing, the different expertise that you had weighed in on the design and so forth, was that in kind, or are we also paying for that?
Oh, we're paying for the design.
And then handicap access.
Yes. So the plan calls for a significant amount of ADA parking, and one of the reasons we went with a rather large lot at the beach at the ocean is this lot right here, and that's where they'll mainly be located, as well as the surfers.
And I'm in agreement with having the sponsorship and donations, because that is important. Like Councilwoman said, that's half the battle of getting that. The other thing for clarity, we're hearing from the public, we're hearing from some of the associations, because they feel as though with this coming right now, it's going to slow down some of the things that Atlantic Avenue that needs fixing. And it's important to get the word out that this is 4 years down the road. Right now, people are thinking it's coming next year. So you really need to clarify that for the public, because they have other projects in line and looking at, well, this is just going to take over. Instead, this is long range, 4 years, maybe less. So that's one thing I would, as you go out and talking with the people, to let them know we have to have this dream by looking at the, the end right now. Thank you.
Barbara?
I think Hutch had his.
Oh, I'm sorry, Hutch.
Oh, it's all right. Go ahead, Ms. Henley. It's fine.
And you touch on it a bit too. We've got several projects citywide, but then we also have several that are in that area, the oceanfront, and I think Worth touched on this a little bit. Can we, and I guess we have to look at the tip, because I guess that's the source of funding for these. We kind of need to see what all is out there and see how they're being prioritized. I know that when you mentioned the Hotel Association, of course, they're very supportive of doing the active sports facility there on 20th Street or 21st or wherever. So somebody's got to make some choices. And I'm not sure who and how, but, we really probably can't do everything. So I think the people, particularly in that area and in that industry, need to kind of work together and help determine what the priorities are, because I think we've got to recognize we can't do everything, and we're going to have to make choices, and I think they need to be the advisors for us, as well as the general public, as we look at these issues. But there's a lot out there. The Atlantic Avenue thing is very important, as well as the other issues. With a lot of money.
Hutch?
Before Hutch says something, I just wanted to say to you that it's been, 6 years? Just come right on the horizon.
Yeah, Hutch.
Okay, just several varying points that I'll bring together in the end, I hope. It's a 50-50 chance. So Ms. Henley had said something, and I know we did lots of public input, and I appreciate that. And then it sounds like, but since we've appropriately, I understand the millions of dollars for the parking garage, but I can tell you is what I'm hearing from District 1 is where are we going to park? And, I understand cutting the parking garage, but if we ask about it, like, what are we going to do about parking? And I appreciate you looking at every nook and cranny that you've done, but that's what you're doing. So is there going to be, I hate to be the one always like talking about logistics and everything else. It's not the fun stuff at this table, as the manager knows from some of his time, is that, but it's an important part, is like, are we going to have a busing plan from the convention center? Are we going to have it come from a Ninth Street garage? Where are these folks going to park, to come down? It's wonderful. I love the idea, the whole big enchilada, right? But that's an issue I brought up last time. Again, I'm going to want to see where you just had Jackalope. I know where their stuff was staged before it went on, right? Because they used this area. So where are we going to put all this? That's an important answer. So I've said about parking, I've said about logistics, and with the public review, since we've said about the parking is going to not be there for a number of years. I know it's a number of years before we get it, but then it'll be a number of years behind it, right? That's what we're saying. And then I'm all for 110, 20, 80% of the sponsorship. If somebody wants to put their name on something, I might be able to afford a 2x4, so we'll do something that way, to help take the sting out of this. But being new to this part on the beginning of a big project like this, I've come in as we've already had the big projects going. When we talk about, however, we talk about sponsorship, donations, philanthropic, does that happen in conjunction with this? How do we keep the price tag at what it's supposed to be? You know what I'm saying? Like, how does that part work? I really don't know.
So what we recommend is the budget is there, so the money has been allocated from the TIP fund for the project. We would keep the money in the project, go seek philanthropic donations and naming rights.
Yeah.
I don't even want to mention what Biederman says he believes we can get, but it's in the millions.
Well, I want it.
We all think there's capacity out there and a willingness from numerous private sector folks that want to give to this. What that final number would be, we don't know.
Yeah.
And then the project goes forward, goes out to bid, and then whatever's left just reverts back to the TIP fund.
Gotcha.
And so you fully fund the project, and then anything that isn't spent remains in the TIP fund.
And then, although, we talked offline, but I love the raised view, and those of us that have been able to be up high down at the oceanfront, it's a whole nother look, right? It's an amazing. It's going to be a fantastic part of this that I think everybody will love.
That's what this park really does. It elevates the views. It changes the topography down there and gets you up.
That's an amazing part of this that I don't know everybody can fully appreciate till you get to do it. So with that being said, is there a way that, I guess I'm asking for future because of what I saw happen with some of our other projects as that price tag keeps bumping up. Is there a way that we go, all right, this is what we're going to do first? And it's I don't necessarily want to say phases, but is this all going to be like we're swallowing the whole enchilada at one time? Or are we going to be able to take bites out of this and build it as the money is available?
My recommendation would be for a park of this size, you would want to build it all at once. I mean, it's a constrained site. You would not want to build half the park and then it's under construction and the other half comes later. And I mean, then you're just, and you have all the electrical systems, you got the irrigation systems, everything is tied in. To that point though, and to the Councilman Remick's point, there is an option whereby the city could go out to bid with alternates. So you bid the entire project, but the splash pad, the iconic central piece, is an alternate. So what's it cost to build a park without it? What's it cost to build it with it? And you start to add on 3 or 4 options that can be dropped. Now that does start to chip into, the task was to build an iconic world-class park. That starts to go away, of course, and the impact of the park goes away. But you could bid it that way with a few of the bigger ticket items as extras and see where the numbers fall once it goes out to bid. But you'd still have to pay to design it, though, altogether and to put it out to bid.
I appreciate that, Michael. I trust what you're saying. I just got to try to understand it, something this big, and then so I can talk about it.
If this was a 30, 50 acre park and you're doing 10 ball fields, yeah, you could do 5 ball fields at once and do the 5 later because it's all pretty much the same.
Right, run the power, have everything ready.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Michael?
Thank you. I have a question about that I received recently from about resiliency and environmental impact. Right now, Rudy Loop is mostly asphalt and gravel. I'm not sure about the shoreline. I'm familiar with the kind of the rocks that are there. But can you talk a little bit about what the environmental impact would be positively or negatively with the implementation of a space like this? I have to imagine it's better because I see permeable surfaces, I see trees, but.
Exactly. So I am not an environmental scientist, but I actually have a degree in environmental science, but did not pursue that career. I will say this, I'm going back to the existing conditions photo, just for reference and perspective. So you're really going from all impervious surface or very, very, very limited impervious surface. It's pretty much all concrete or gravel at Rudy Loop. And you're going to this. So there is certainly tremendous ability to absorb more runoff, more rainfall, less pollutants entering our waterways. To what level? That analysis has not been done, I don't believe. But you're talking about shade, vegetation, certainly from an environmental perspective. If you're looking at just from an environmental, not recreation, not use, not preference, I would say yes, that is preferable from an environmental standpoint to that.
So is just a quick follow-up. Right now, the stormwater runs from the site into Rudy Inlet? That's untreated?
Yeah, that is accurate. I think the low points are as you go toward the marina, so it starts
Or into
higher
the
at the boardwalk and works its way back.
Lake Rudy or after, what's that?
Yeah, Lake Rudy. Mm-hmm.
And then how did resiliency factor into the design? Sea level rise and other aspects of environmental change?
So we had a lot of good discussion with that, especially with what's happening with the resiliency, the city's study, the Army Corps' study, and the potential for a tide gate across the inlet and how the park plans, tie into that effectively. Obviously, we don't want to put infrastructure in there for the park. And then in 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, when this tide gate comes in, you have to tear all that up. So we've been working closely with them. We know what their plans are. We're seeing which type of gate works best for the Rudy project. And then also, we're not doing a whole lot along the shoreline as much as we're going to try to keep that intact as much as possible. We do have the area on the get down the inlet steps area where we're going to get down to that lower elevation a little bit. But for the most part, we're planning on keeping, that shoreline mostly intact as it is. The elevations are good. We don't have a lot of concerns there, but the overall impact of the site by reducing the impervious cover by potentially 60% is good. It's a stormwater engineer's dream because you're removing all that impervious. You don't have a lot of so you get credit for removing all that impervious surface. There are some areas on the site where we're going to fill, but that's just to get things up to the right elevation of the boardwalk and make these transitions better, make it more ADA accessible, and working out the grading and drainage from that standpoint. But
And then last question, Mayor, do you have any concerns about, because I know like we're talking about trees, live oaks, I think those are live oaks depicted. I hope they are. They're beautiful. It's my favorite tree. And I know that they can be tolerant to salt and they grow in coastal environments. But do you have any concerns about the elevation and the proximity to the ocean and salt? I mean, with this level of investment, we just don't want to find ourselves in a position where the park is flooding and then landscaping.
That's a great question, and we've had great partners on the design team that are addressing that. Preliminary on the landscape plan, how this works is you have the harsh coastal environment with the beach as you work your way back to the marina, the condition gets a little bit softer and softer. But the whole idea is as you get back toward the marina side or to the west, that your live oaks and your other trees are there, but in front of that, we have some kind of sacrificial type plant material, if you will, to start to buffer and protect the live oaks and the other vegetation that we want to remain and grow and thrive. So there's a strategy that is in place to protect and move pieces around to allow things to grow how we want them to grow until that condition gets up to speed and is able to thrive on its own.
Thank you. Appreciate the thoughtfulness that you've all put into that.
Okay, anybody else at this point? Rosemary?
I just wanted to comment because I heard Atlantic Avenue you brought up, and if you remember, this council decided when the bid came in, $60 million over budget, that we really weren't ready to do that. So we formed a committee. We haven't started to meet yet. We scaled it back to make sure that Atlantic Avenue is taken care of, and we're going to be working on that shortly. See how that money is going to be spent to improve Atlantic Avenue. So Atlantic Avenue is going to be getting some attention in the council. We all agreed upon that. 17th Street was brought up. And I know we've been wrecked with inflation, but we had $48 million budgeted for that, and it came in at $42 million. So I think we have really finally gotten our handle on this inflation. I think it has slowed down, and so we've got better ideas of how things are going to be bid out. And this park, Sussex Construction, they went out, they got real numbers, really what they think it's going to be. And another thing I wanted to mention is Winston-Salem is well under construction. It's coming along, it's going to be finished by this time next year. But in the bigger picture, think about VB Trail is going to start at Newtown Road. Done, it's going to be able to end in the park. It's going to be absolutely fabulous. So it's all going to work together, and when you look at it, it's a master plan. So I think when you look at what we want to accomplish and getting the sponsorships, we're going to be able to really get that price tag down. That 14 million people a year come to Virginia Beach, and all of these places for naming opportunities are going to be outside and free for people to walk around and see. We were able to raise $15 million for a building where everything's going to be inside, and they raised that much money. Can you imagine? It's going to be fantastic. So I think there's a lot of excitement, and it's going to bring a lot of people here. It's going to keep people coming back.
Okay, anybody else? Yeah, if I could, throw something out and, hey, I want to see this project done. For 30 years, the dome site is sat. But once again, in talking to a few folks and everything, I guess, like I said, we got to get to yes on this. But the thing is, where does it fit in the whole picture of all the obligations that we have at the oceanfront? And what I'm going to recommend, instead of just making a definitive decision today, let's agree that we're going to do it, sometime in the immediate near future. But the thing is, if we could have a discussion on where this fits into, because we hear all over that we need garages, we need a whole bunch of infrastructure and things of this nature. But the other thing, and this also gives us the opportunity that, if you can get a direction today to pursue the external funding mechanisms that I think would give everybody, just a little bit of a better picture. And, that we did a little due diligence and, but basically this is a priority. But a lot of folks around have, priorities and needs too, especially all over the thing. So I'm just recommending a bit of a strategic pause today with the direction, let's find out about that external funding thing. And, to be honest with you, I don't think we can build this thing without a parking garage. I agree with Hutch. If we wait, it's going to take 10 years to get that. And if it has the success that we do, I'd rather, if we could find a way, to do that, because, Hutch, I think Hutch is right. It could take about maybe 10 years to get something out there. And we need, how many parking garages do we need at the oceanfront? That's the number one problem that we have. That's the number one concern of hotels and businesses. So, yeah, I'm going to throw that out for conversation. I don't want to make this myself. What do you think? Anybody?
I agree. Not long, but.
Not long, no, we're going to get it
So
done.
when you talk about a pause, how long are you talking about?
Just a couple of weeks, but you give them time to get some
Couple
more
weeks.
information. But I would also like a staff, discussion on all the priorities that we have there, so we could actually see the puzzle. And, let's get it done this month. Yeah.
I like that approach, and but I also think we can go ahead maybe and ask them to develop a fundraising plan.
That's exactly what I'm
Yeah,
saying,
so-
come up with a
like-
fundraising plan.
And if we need to commit resources, I guess beyond what we've already, and I think everybody probably just needs to be reminded, these are tourism dollars. This is, tip money, and this is hotel and restaurant taxes and, cigarette taxes, amusement taxes and things. This is not real estate taxes. So, and you both are absolutely right. I think we do need to prioritize. And the parking need is acute, as we all know. So, anyway, I concur.
Worth and then Barbara.
I concur as well, and also possibly a menu, like you said, Director Kirschman, on maybe some options to value engineer or,
So-
back in scale.
Just for clarity, we can certainly do that, but that's under the assumption, is this the design that council approves? So I would not want to go on the path of working with the consultants, getting hard numbers on these amenities. If this is the design, we could then come forward with a plan to go seek sponsorships and test the temperature out there. But I would caution doing that until the plan is approved by council.
Okay, Barbara and then Michael.
Well, I think you're right. We have to decide on the plan, but I certainly want to hear more from the general public because it's been pretty silent as far as anything I've seen or heard. But anyway, we have other issues that even haven't been mentioned today, like the aquarium is pretty big. Which are these issues citywide that we're going to include in this particular prioritization? But, it can get broad, and there are just so many really good things that we want to do, and how we manage to get them all in this system that we're going to be planning. But that's going to take some doing. But I think we have to really look at all of these issues and prioritizing. We may very well find out that some complement each other to the point that they, as far as the economic value and so forth, that they're able to be counted as being income producers in more instances, or at least value more than just the tourism, because we have to look at, as I said, I think we kind of have to look at these things from a citywide perspective, because many of these things our citizens are participants too. I think with the aquarium, they certainly are, because that's not only something for our tourists to do on a rainy day, but it's something that our regular folks really use and enjoy too. So many of these issues are, shared by our public as well as the tourist industry. So we don't want it to get really cast as being just a tourism kind of thing because we're using the tip, because I think we have to look at where are the values for our citizens too, and to hear from our citizens from that aspect.
Hey, Michael.
Thank you, Mayor. And I have no concern with continued conversation. I think continued conversation is beneficial for all. I just want to make sure that conversation is inclusive of the many different inputs we must consider when evaluating a project such as this. For example, I just want to acknowledge that I think part of the reason so much time is being spent here is that the resort is an economic engine for the city. It's one of the many economic drivers that exist in Virginia Beach that help to provide outstanding services, keep taxes low relative to the region, and have the best and most services of any of our sister and neighbor communities. For me, serving a district that is not a part of the oceanfront resort, It's important that the oceanfront resort be accessible and a destination for Virginia Beach residents as well as tourists, which also has a positive economic impact. But more than that, it has a quality of life impact. And I know that there are many residents in Virginia Beach who have a perception that the oceanfront isn't a place where that they would want to visit or always are welcome to visit, or the parking and all the things that go with it. But having a space such as this, I think, would help to provide a welcome mat and a sense of enjoyment for Virginia, for people who live here, for our neighbors, and for ourselves, as well as for people who visit. If we're going to spend more time doing future analysis, I would like to contemplate. Vice Mayor mentioned Millennium Park. I think it's Millennium Park. But let's also think about. I remember years ago when we were first talking about a park in this space, the professional staff had a list of other kind of public spaces across the country. I know there's one in St. Petersburg that's really amazing. I think the La Jolla City Park was on there. There were a number of others. And I think we need to have a better understanding about what the impact of those parks has been before and after development on the economics of the surrounding area and that community, but as well as some of the quality of life impacts that can have occurred from a space like that. Because, for example, I was in a similar space as what this is envisioned to be last year, and I saw thousands of people, residents and visitors from that community streaming into that space for events, to go to the restaurants that were there, to hang out with their families and meet their friends. It was an amazing transformation that occurred from what was nothing before into a space like that. And I think a transformation such as this would have just an impact on our community in a positive way that we're not necessarily envisioning. So as we talk about the competition with those other things, I just want to make sure we have a clear picture of what a space like this is. It's potentially positive economically, positive community, positive culturally. I can imagine arts and cultural events happening here in a way that enriches life and is attractive to visitors. This could be something really dynamic and amazing and economically positive and culturally positive. And we need to have that in mind. Also, and I'll put a finer point on it, we received a letter from the Hotel Association that emphasized, among other things, their interest in the Atlantic Avenue improvements, which is, and I've heard Atlantic Avenue is mentioned as a welcome mat, the front door of the city of Virginia Beach, and it is for many people who visit here. So are our neighborhoods, but I understand their point, and I don't think they're in conflict. It's a scarcity of resources and financial and otherwise. And so I do think it's appropriate and responsible to sort through all those things. But in doing so, I just want to make sure we're not missing in any way the impact that a public space could have, like this, could have on a community. It could really change the community for generations to come in a positive way.
Okay. Hutch?
Just real quick, I want to just say, I love this. I appreciate y'all's hard work. I know this is like, oh, daggone it. We got to, it's got to put it in a little bit slow down mode here for a minute. But I really believe this is a measure twice, cut once. It's such a big thing. It's such an important issue for us. I know it's been years. We want to get there. It'll be fantastic. I just think we got to be very careful. And as Councilman Berlucci just said, and the others, is that there's so many little parts here. We're not going to be able to count for them all. I know that's utopia, but we should try to nail down as many as we can in forthright time, not long time. Let's just try to start moving it that way. And then once we get there, then we can feel good that we've put a lot of stuff into the process. That's for me. Thanks.
Okay, at this point, I would like everybody to consider that our goal is to get to yes on this. That's the goal. The other goal, does anybody have any problem with the design? I like the design, but once again, I like the garage, but that can probably be factored in. Yeah.
Just one question about the design. And I don't think it's come up yet, but I have heard it from the public. The Water Plaza. and we could talk, we don't have to get to this great level of granular detail today, but I'm curious about how much the water plaza costs. It's just the proximity to the ocean makes it such that if you wanted to, and I know there's surfing there, but I don't know. I just don't know how much that is relative to the project in total. And I know people do like those splash areas, but we also do have a water park right down the road. And maybe maybe that's a way to create some savings, because I have to imagine that's expensive to create and maintain.
It is an expensive feature. We can get the exact number for you. I will say, though, and what Clay Dills would say, I think, would be the spray ground was one of the top ranked and most requested amenities for this park. So hence its inclusion in a big way.
Too.
Without a doubt, we need a spray ground at Mount Trashmore next to Kids Cove. But we can get those numbers for you, certainly.
Okay, Barbara.
I've heard no feedback, so I can't say this is the design I like, because I haven't heard anything from anybody. So I'm really waiting to hear from particularly the people who are most involved, and I wish they would kind of include all of us if they're making some comments.
Okay, but once again, we had a briefing on it a couple of weeks ago and, things of that nature. Once again, we're making a strategic pause, but we have to be decisive. I think that's one thing we all have to agree on. Okay, so if we can do this, Patrick, going forward, if we can just have a presentation about the multiple projects that are out there on the radar. Let's not forget, we just did this study around the convention center with the 80 acres there. We got a lot of stuff on the table, and, just in term, so we get our priorities straight and we demonstrate to the public that we're looking at the whole picture. But once again, I think the goal is to get the yes. But the other thing is too, I think the council, unless I'm wrong, is okay with the design, so you can get into at least the specifics a little bit more. But the other thing is too, the alternative funding mechanism, I think, would be a very, very good selling point to the public and all the businesses around there and everything. Patrick.
So, Mayor, what I got that council wants us to come back with is the economic and cultural impact of parks, a parking plan for events, bring back a fundraising plan, do a tip analysis with all the projects that's currently contemplated for the tip, and I think that's about it.
Okay, what's a reasonable time for that? I know this is a tough one, but
About 45, 60 days.
okay.
Sorry. One thing was missing, and I hope you don't mind, but just a better understanding of like what we're contributing to the environmental features and like kind of a base level, how are we making it better? Would be nice. Is that okay with that? Sure.
Okay.
Can
So,
we reduce the scope?
yeah.
Trees and wetlands, grasses.
Okay, so what I got is a parking plan for events, economic and cultural impacts of parks, a fundraising plan, a tip analysis to include all the projects currently being contemplated for the tip. Okay, and then also an environmental impact associated with the features of the park. And then part of that also is the cost of the different park elements for possible value engineering.
Yeah, but, keeping in mind that the essence of the plan is really good, okay? I know this is a better, it's a delay, but once again, sometimes delayed gratification is the way to go to make sure we get it right. And then, once again, perception of the public is that we're doing, the right thing, we're being decisive, we're evaluating things of that nature. And, in terms of the long term of getting this done, like within a 4-year period, this may actually help out quite a bit. Okay? Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, moving on.
All right, so Mr. Mayor, members of council, at this time, at the request of several members of council, staff from Housing and Neighborhood Preservation is going to come and give City Council a briefing on the city's homelessness efforts and its our actions as it relates to enforcement.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Michael. Good afternoon, Mayor Dyer and Vice Mayor Wilson and distinguished council members and City Manager Duhaney. Today, we're going to talk about homeless issues and service delivery. And my plan is to talk about our goals, understanding homelessness and the scope of what happens here in the city. Our community system we'll talk again about, and then strategies to address the unsheltered homeless in our city, then outcomes that had happened, excuse me. So, as you know, making homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring is what we do here in the city of Virginia Beach, which means we are preventing homelessness, we are shortening the length of time that people are experiencing it, and then we stably house them and surround them with support so they can maintain their housing. Homelessness has multiple factors. People experience it due to lots of reasons, and the people that are experiencing homeless are very diverse, and so are their needs. Just like the community at large. What I'd like to say is people move in and out of homelessness on an ongoing basis, and it's not necessarily a finite number of people. It changes all the time. Many people resolve their homelessness on their own, and the length of homelessness can be short or long, or several years even, if in some cases. We have a coordinated multidisciplinary effort to work with people to ensure that they receive the services that they need. But people are free to be in public spaces, regardless of their housing status, and they have personal choice. So we have an annual point-in-time count that you guys are probably very familiar with. We counted this year on January 23rd of 2025. It's important for you to note that this is a one-day snapshot of homelessness, and it's not the full view of homelessness in our city. As you can see, for 2025, our numbers did increase by 16 persons here in the city. It went from 311 in 2024 to 327 this year. We look at point-in-time data as well as real-time data every day to understand the full scope of homelessness in our city. So if you look at the trend over the last 10 years, you can see that there has been a 34% decrease in unsheltered homelessness, which is huge. And we attribute that to making the co-occurring investment in our non-congregate shelter and permanent housing in 2021, which happened at the height of the pandemic during COVID, as you remember. But additionally, we saw a 5% increase in overall homelessness from last year. That increase of 16 persons were all single in our city when we went back and looked at the data. So in the city of Virginia Beach, we have approximately 150 people that are unsheltered at any, households, excuse me, that are unsheltered at any given time. That can equate to about 318 people in our on our by name list, and that includes both sheltered and unsheltered people. Approximately 75 people, 75% or 112 people are single men and women, and a small subset lives in encampments of those singles. You can see there's about 75 people, and we have between 30 and 35 encampments known to the outreach team. And we'll talk about outreach in a few minutes. What's important to recognize is that the face of homelessness is the most visible and cause of public concern, but it really is only a subset of what we have in our city. The presence of unsheltered individuals in places where people would rather not see them happens, and then bad or illegal behavior by people who are presumed to be homeless happens. Sometimes panhandlers are considered homeless because they have a sign, but they're not necessarily all homeless. Many of them that we see panhandling, we know to be housed. The encampments issue is not a new issue to us, but we have seen some increased visibility in the city of Virginia Beach. Yeah, I'll move on. So if you look at the emerging challenges that we are dealing with, what we have found is that about 70, I wanted to really point out this bullet or this point at the bottom about mental health. We have about 75 to 80% of the unsheltered individuals in our city that have symptoms of mental health, substance abuse, or both. And so that is an issue that is addressing some of the reasons why we cannot shelter people continually. You can see that they don't want to necessarily leave their belongings behind, including pets. Couples want to be sheltered together, and in our system, we do not have an ability for people to shelter together. If you're a family with children, you could shelter together, but if you're a couple, we have single shelters for females and males, but not together. There is concern about people's contracting communicable illnesses or diseases, and then people just want autonomy about where they live. We talked about the mental health substance abuse issue, and then we talked a little bit already about the encampment issue. I want to make sure you understand that the encampment issue involves balancing health and safety for the surrounding community, as well as our shelter capacity. We want to be compassionate about those that are unsheltered in our city, and we understand that people have a personal choice, and sometimes they're servants resistant to what we provide. There's property ownership issues around encampments, and there's also legal precedents that we have to be concerned about. So thank you to your approval. In March 2024, we were able to increase our shelter beds at 53% for the single adults in our city. We went to 88 beds. Our total system has 207 beds. 53 of them are for families and singles experiencing domestic violence. 40 beds are for families with minor children. Those are at the HRC, as well as the single shelter beds of 88. There are 10 youth beds and 16 transitional beds. Neither of those are with our providers. Neither of those are at the city's HRC. 44% of those who are exiting our single shelter go into permanent housing. And then 87% of our families that are in emergency shelter exit into permanent housing. So we are really pleased with that outcome. Those are great outcomes for our system. What's important to note here, though, is that our ability to permanently house people has to do with the capacity of housing that's affordable and suitable for people that are transitioning from homelessness. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our community system to address homelessness, and a little bit about the history that many of you already know. There has been a city, faith, and nonprofit partnership for about 30 years in the city of Virginia Beach, and it started with the Winter Shelter Program that continues to this date. Beach Community Partnership was formed in 2009. I was actually one of the executive team that started that. I was at Samaritan House at the time as their executive director, so I have a long history of homeless service in our city, just not here at the city. Homelessness, the key milestones that we wanted to bring up was that in 2017, right before we opened the HRC, was our first Community One strategic plan. And then last year, you approved the adoption of our new 5-year strategic plan. I wanted to point out this group of almost 40 partners that are listed here that make our work comprehensive and collaborative. We could not do it without our partners. I also wanted to thank Dr. Ross Hammond and David Hutchinson, who are our new liaisons for the governing board, who provides leadership, insight, and direction on homeless services in our system. So thank you for your efforts to attend those meetings and provide your leadership. So the types of resources available have to do with financial assistance, permanent housing, and shelter. We do provide day support at the HRC. which is basic assistance to include showers, laundry, housing support. One of the greatest needs for the unsheltered person is losing their identification. So working with them to get birth certificate assistance and get their ID docs back in place is critical. We provide financial assistance. There's hygiene items, the bike shop. We do work with an LGBTQ community through a partner, and we have youth meetings in our system. There are food and meals that are provided through our providers, and then there's health services through the HRC for our participants, as well as through a provider that has them at the ocean front. There are 3 ways to access the system. One is at the HRC. You can walk in Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday from 8 to noon. And there is help to locate housing, referrals to shelter, and other resources that are available. As you know, the HRC is our one-stop shop for integrated service delivery for anybody in a housing crisis in the city. Then we have a partner, 4 Kids Incorporated, who manages our Regional Houses Crisis Hotline. And that is now open as of June of this year, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5:30. They have changed their times. It's a little bit shortened than it has been. And then our outreach team that I'll talk about in a few minutes is out and about in the community Monday through Friday. And they do routine and flexible hours depending on what the needs are and what they're finding. And their role is to build trust and relationships, and they're not an enforcement team to people on the street. So the way to access shelter is through these 3 places of access that I talked about, but we use a tool and we prioritize based on the most vulnerable people that are in our system. You can see that list there: people 65 and above and older, people with acute health conditions we prioritize, families with minor children from 0 to 5, and then anybody who has received a notice to vacate from an encampment. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. Shelter providers report vacancies daily to our coordinated assessment team, and their referrals are done through a collective approach with outreach day services and the CA staff. Length of stay at the shelter is not based on a predetermined period of time. It is fluid based on the needs of the person that is in that shelter bed, and that our rules are really based on safety, which means we are low barrier, and that means it's not punitive. So people can come in with some of the issues we talked about with mental health and substance abuse issues, but it's their behavior that we're looking at, not their condition. So let's talk about the street outreach program, which are really our housing navigators. It's a 5-person team. It consists of 1 team lead and 4 team members, and they are out and about Monday through Friday, early morning and evening as needed. They're looking for people that are living in the cars, encampments, the boardwalk, and particularly places not met for human habitation. So that might be a storefront, it might be a bench, it might be a sidewalk. It oftentimes is an encampment. Their role is to build trust and then to offer connections to services, which includes mental health services, substance abuse, and health care. They provide connections to shelter, and they also work to create actionable plans with that individual that can lead to permanent housing. And they also help to navigate that plan. Again, we talked a few minutes ago about the misconception that they are enforcement authority. That is not their role. They are building trusting relationships, and their focus is to connect people. They're really connectors to housing and resources that they need in our system. So we're going to talk a little bit here about our strategies and also some challenges and concern around our strategies. So to look at the capacity, we talked about the increase of 30 beds, and that is a win for us. And so that was completed in March 2024. We are working on an enhanced landlord engagement, and we're working to incentivize landlords who would be willing to house people that have experienced homelessness. The city contributed $1 million through home and city ARPA funds to our partner, Judeo-Christian Outreach Center, to build 38 units of permanent supporting housing, and they're under construction, and they're due to be completed early 2026. We talked to Todd a couple of weeks ago, and they're looking at being completed maybe at the end of this year, but leasing up in January of 2026. So let me go back. I didn't talk about the budget we have, and it was approved by you this year, so thank you for that prevention and diversion money. It's about $255,000. But that money is for people up to 60% of the area median income. There are some state funds for people that are 30% AMI and below, and so that those funds, as you can imagine, have to go a long way because we have a lot of needs of people that are coming into our system asking for prevention and diversion. Those monies are to keep people from becoming homeless, and that's what we use. So first month's rent, deposits, we might help with an arrearages. That's what we use those funds for. We also have VB Home Now, which is a private foundation that helps us with private donations to continue the work that we do, and so we're really thankful for that partnership. This year convened a multidisciplinary outreach effort with the homeless outreach and the peer recovery mental health staff from the HSD department, and they are now meeting twice a week to talk about and work on discussing issues around those that have mental health and substance abuse issues. And then we need to talk about the concern about personal choice again. I requested for 2 housing specialist positions, an outreach team in the Homeless Services Division budget, but it was not funded. We believe that that's going to be continued to be a need. As you saw, our unsheltered numbers have continued to rise. So visibility of encampments is something we'll talk a little bit further about in a minute, but we started last year, and it's continued this year in March of 2024, a multi-departmental work group that includes housing, parks and rec, landscape services, VBPD, the Attorney's Office, Human Services, Planning, Zoning, Public Works, EMS, and Fire. This group meets twice a month, and we talk about a site assessment and response strategy and look at specific sites that have come to our attention, encampment sites, and then talked about, based on this new system that we have implemented that came out of actually Houston. Pam looked at some best practice models, Pam Shine, our Homeless Services Administrator, and picked this one because it really is strategically based on safety for the community and the participant. And so we looked at this and we implemented the strategy, and we meet and put a response together. We'll talk about the outcomes of that at the final slide of what we've done this year. I think you'll be pleased. Thanks to Parks and Rec and their work, there is $250,000 for cleaning up homeless encampments that they pay for. I want to talk briefly here about the unsheltered homelessness at the oceanfront and the town center. So we have enhanced outreach with the flexible hours and on-call staff to look at that, to be available when a call comes in. Outreach then deploys to where that call is coming from, either at the oceanfront or the town center. We're prioritizing and targeting emergency housing vouchers based on the vulnerability of the person, which is something that we hadn't done before. And then the coordination with 3rd Precinct and Captain Gordon has been phenomenal at the town center, and then we've worked with also CBDA at town center and the Economic Development Department. VBPD and Resort Management are working really closely together as well. As you know, there is a group of ambassadors that are both at the Oceanfront and Town Center, and that team has been working alongside VBPD and the outreach team. I did want to talk about some action steps that happened at Town Center with a particular business owner that we met with on April 7th. I believe that was the date. We met with some stakeholders, but they implemented, based on that meeting and some suggestions from that meeting, putting together, tying their camera system in with the Virginia FUSA system, posting a sign on their door saying services entry for customers only, introducing the employees to how to call the police when they experience or see any violations. That had not been happening, so that happened. Talking to employees about the outreach number. Our outreach team went and talked to them, provided their numbers and their cards. So if anything happened with somebody experiencing homelessness, they felt comfortable to call an outreach team member to come to them. And then encouraging the employees to file criminal charges if criminal behavior was being seen. And so those things were implemented, and then there were 11 other suggestions that have come to us that we are reviewing. We had a subsequent meeting last week, and we are reviewing those other suggestions. I also wanted to talk about the response with VBPD. And again, I wanted to point out that Captain Gordon and their team has been amazing. So they did some engagement with stakeholders themselves, and they had a productive meeting with local business stakeholders. They have done enhanced patrols at Town Center in response to community concerns. They have conducted several daily briefings, as they call musters, with their patrol staff to delve into the specific issues that have been happening there. And they actually went into the parking garages that were identified as areas of concern, and they equipped their officers with the latest information and talked about unifying their efforts to respond to the needs of the community. Then, as I mentioned, there was some communication with a particular business owner on May 5th and their employees to encourage open dialogue, to talk about the concerns, and then to talk about the effective reporting of how they should report the procedures. There's also a community liaison officer that has been doing really good work in the presence of tents and encampments, providing resources to those persons that might be experiencing homelessness at Town Center. And it reflects the police's commitment not only to enforcement, but support, which we appreciate so much. And then they have offered insightful recommendations for businesses at Town Center, and understand that there is a need to understand what's going on, and that the coexistence between businesses and those in need will continue to need to happen there at Town Center. So I wanted to give, again, a great thank you to Captain Gordon and his team. So back to what this Homeless Services is doing is, this is the Community of One All-In strategy that we developed with your approval, and it was approved in May of 2024. The first two items we have already completed to expand the coordination between the city departments and develop an encampment response strategy. I talked a little bit about that. And then we increased our non-congregate shelter opportunities when we plan on doing that, when we're going to we opened year-round shelter beds this year. We're also looking to potentially open up some rooms at the HRC during the winter to create a small overflow shelter from April to November, not in the winter, like winter shelter. At the HRC, that is one of the things we will talk about this year to implement in 2026. Increase in outreach staff for peer recovery and mental health is on our list, and then partnerships for storage and pet support. The other thing that's really important to point out is that, as I said earlier, without the availability of adequate affordable housing targeting low-income households, we're going to continue to have issues with people that we cannot permanently house from shelter. All right, I'm going to move on. So our outcomes to date are, with our encampment, is that we have cleared 100 encampments since March of 2024. 20 of those individuals were connected to shelter, and 5 to 10 of them exited to housing from shelter. I think it's important, and this, I think, data is really important to know that that encampment clearance strategy is working. I wanted to talk a little bit about a request to move the clearance from 21 days to 14 days. But the reason that we have been unable to successfully do that is that we need to transition individuals off the street so they don't set up encampment elsewhere, and we don't necessarily have capacity to move them in shelter within a shorter time frame. Also, the contractor that does the work for Parks and Recs oftentimes is not available within that time frame to clear it. But I think it's important to note that before we started the strategy, we knew about 30 to 35 encampments. But since then, we have learned of more because this effort and because outreach is going out there. Encampments oftentimes get cleared and then they're reactivated months later, so that will happen. But the thing I think that's really important also to note is that oftentimes an encampment will, outreach will go out to the encampment as soon as we have made the notation for clearance. They engage them, and people will oftentimes move out of that location, but it's not cleared within the 21 days. So it could be that the tent is still there, the debris is still there, but the person has moved on. So just because you see things there doesn't mean that there's somebody living there. So oftentimes we see that people are moving on their own before the clearance notice comes in. So I just wanted to finally share a couple of the clearances. These were shared with you last year, but they, you can see that this was at Lynn Shores and Virginia Beach Boulevard and what it looked like before and then after the clearance. This one at Potter's Road at Wesley Drive, part 1, and then part 2. This was a huge encampment, you may remember, but it's cleared and it's beautiful. And to the date, I don't believe that one has been re-engaged. Has that, Pam? No, thank you. Potter's Road at Wesley Drive, part 3. So there were 3 different encampments. It was very large. It took us quite a bit of time to get this done, but it was a success. So questions for me?
Michael.
Well, I have a lot of questions and some comments too, but could you just go back to that Potter's Road at Wesley Drive, because that happens to be in District 3, and that's something that has been a community concern for a long time. And the before, and I've walked through that encampment, and it was really troubling to see the state that property was in and the public health and safety hazard that it presented. And so I just want to, and I know everyone cares about the people who were living there and for their safety and well-being. And we also have a responsibility to the safety, well-being of the entire community, including the neighborhood that's directly adjacent to this, which has been impacted by the presence of this encampment and other associated matters. But it's just an amazing before and after. So I have one, and so thank you.
Yeah.
I do have one specific question, and I think the public needs to be aware of this, so I'm going to be really blunt about it. Those encampments are dangerous because I think there are hazardous materials. I think there's biological materials. I think there are, there's fire sometimes and electricity used there. And other things that I don't even want to mention here. And so when you so-called clean up a site like this, how did that work? I mean, I see grass growing there again. I mean, how do we know that those materials have been cleaned
Great question.
from an encampment? I have a few more, but
Yeah,
but
so,
just on this topic of
so
this
Parks
encampment.
and Recreation does the clearance, and they have a contract with a bio-waste contractor that can come in and do it correctly and needed. And that's what I mentioned before. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer because they have a schedule and they are doing other things before they can get out there. But we do have, Parks and Recs does have the right people doing that correct clearance for those items.
That's really good to know, and I think the public needs to know that. And I also think the public needs to know the condition that the encampments end up in after people are living there, because they own that property. It's not the city doesn't own the property. The people who live here and pay taxes own that property. It belongs to the people. And I think they should know the condition that these public properties end up in after the encampments are present. So that's why, with compassion and kindness and courtesy and professionalism, I'm grateful for the stronger enforcement that your office has taken in relation to these encampments, because it's not just, it's not just a nuisance in the visual sense. It's actually dangerous. And there are young people who live adjacent to these properties, and kids play there and go there, and we don't want them to be encountering those types of materials before or after the encampments exist. So I am grateful for that. I'm also glad that you mentioned the topic of LGBTQ homelessness. I just pulled something up that I think is interesting. I want to put a finer point on that, because, of course, it's beginning of Pride Month as well, and it's just an opportunity to share some information and statistics that the National Coalition for the Homeless, which is just a quick Google search that I made. I'm not familiar with this organization, but their statistics are in line with what I'm hearing from other places, that 40% of LGBTQ youth, that's people under 18, identify as a member of the LGBTQ community. They say 17% of the members of the LGBTQ community stated that they had experienced homelessness at some point in their life. 20% of those in the LGBTQ community had experienced homelessness before the age of 18. I mean, these are staggering statistics. And there are other very troubling statistics that relate to this. And 68% of those who were experiencing homelessness, who are part of the community, say they had a history of family rejection, which many people think doesn't occur, but it still does occur, and ultimately results in homelessness. And as a result, I just want to call out one organization, Stand Up for Kids, that specifically works with LGBTQ youth in Virginia Beach. I know the LGBT Life Center is also doing similarly positioned work. I know your office is doing, so that type of specific outreach it's in response to a crisis that's occurring and continues to occur. And I think as we have this conversation, particularly as it relates to youth, I mean, I could go further. The work that what's the group Joy Rios does? Connect with the Wish. Sorry, I couldn't think of the name right at the top. With foster families, also Human Services Department, and is really helping to keep those young people from experiencing homelessness. It's really amazing. Councilmember Hutchison and I recently met with 4 kids, and they have the crisis number that serves Virginia Beach, as well as other programs. Obviously, we love the JCC. I mean, I can go on. I don't want to name every one. I'm sorry for the ones I didn't name, but there's a lot of great people out there doing really important work, with being led by heart and compassion. I know our Human Rights Commission is interested in this topic and has advocated for people experiencing homelessness. And what I want to, I knew I shouldn't start naming. Look at that. Look at that list. But the beautiful part is that there's all these people doing good work. The scary part, though, is that, and I think those of us around the table who receive constituent feedback on this topic will affirm that people are concerned about the impact that homelessness, and you're right, those who they perceive to be homeless is having on their safety, on their investments, their home, and their and other investments that they have, their property. I've spoken to car dealerships who say that there's people who live in encampments who literally just throw rocks at the vehicle inventory. And if you're in the car business with the $7,000 deductible per vehicle, when you're a dealer, I mean, it becomes very expensive. We have car dealers who people break into the window and sleep in the car and live in the cars. I've talked to constituents who, and I know you know all this, but who go outside in the morning and there's a person filling up a bucket on their hose, which isn't, it's a crime. I mean, it's not good. It's not the biggest, violation that I've ever heard of, but it's scary to people. And you can't steal anything, water. We want people to have water, obviously, but you can't just go and take it from anywhere you want when you want to. And those are the things that I think we need to continue to have a very robust enforcement around. And it's a delicate balance, and I think your office is doing it well, and I applaud you. I do think you're understaffed. I'd like to know more about what you could do with more staffing, staff support. You have and you noted this, we have people that don't want to connect to services and they want to live in an encampment. Well, that may not be an option if you're living on public property. And so we have to be mindful of those who are vulnerable and who have the least and who are disadvantaged and who are experiencing mental health. I know everyone is compassionate about that. And I mean, because you see a lot of them, the types of emails and phone calls that I get from the impact that this issue is causing in the community. And I'm glad you're focusing on town center because there is a real issue with town center. There's also an issue around Cleveland Street and that business corridor that wasn't mentioned here that we need to address. And I'll be happy to follow up with you about that as well. So I think we need to remain compassionate, but I also think we need to be tough in many instances so that we don't have the public's property turning into a biological waste dump, or people running loose throughout the neighborhoods, taking property that doesn't belong to them and doing other things that have a negative impact on our quality of life and safety.
Thank you, Michael. Well said.
Try to be succinct here to get this moved along, but will you go to slide 20, Ruth? 21, actually, to start with. So I applaud you and Pam and everybody else. The work y'all are doing as a lot of our departments, y'all are right there at the tip of the spear, doing what's needed to help this. Kind of what Councilman Berlucci was just saying in a slightly different way is, I've said it before, the friendly, fair, and firm. Y'all are trying to get them into the programs, but when you have to go and clear 100 encampments, and the people going into shelter is not that great, it doesn't look like, right? That number. Is that right, Ruth? Is that?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
An
That's why I want
encampment
some clarity.
clearance could be emptied, so not every encampment had people. Pam would have that specific data, so I could have her pull some of it, and we could get
It's all
something
right.
to you.
It's just I think, as we say here a lot for the public to see, is that it's not for lack of trying, but what we also run into is that, because we didn't mention the new VB Trail, and all along that area is heavily encamped, as we know, and we move them, and then they move to one of the other sites if we can't get them to go into y'all's services. So that's just an issue that I think and I don't necessarily have a great answer for it, other than we're trying. And
As I said, we are prioritizing a shelter bed for campment and clearances. So if, we set aside, and there will be a bed available if we're clearing the campment.
And if they'll take it.
Exactly. It's volunteer.
I mean, that's my point, is that I've done not quite as long as you, but I've worked in enough homelessness to know that there are those that are just not mental health reasons or whatever, they're not going to do it. So that's a tough one. Then my next, if you go to slide 20 real quick, and then I'll be done. The second bullet there, increased non-congregant sheltering opportunities. Is that what you were talking about when you were saying, like, through the summer months and doing different things? Is that
correct?
Okay. That to me is a very good process, something that if we have the capacity, I strongly support that, because that helps us, as you're talking about, moving them through the process. If we can get them some help over the summer, because typically the sheltering programs have been nothing, I mean, not nothing, wrong way to, I'm sorry, I don't want to overstate it, but it's usually winter. We're trying to do it, but in the summer, come April, we say, hey, hope you make it till next winter, or whatever. So I think that's important. And that leads to my final statement is that, do you have a number, or Pam, or can you get us a number? Is like, we can do this with the HRC right now. This is our number, our max number. And I know that y'all got every nook and cranny. I mean, I've been there enough to know, like, you're doing all you can with that space. But if we came across something else, a warehouse, an old hotel, something like that, where we could maybe turn something else into a shelter, what would the number be that you feel like we're short? I guess is what I'm asking. And it's not for right now. And we're talking about wish lists all up and down the city and parking garages and everything else. But this is a constituent issue, at least in 4 or 5 of our districts here I know of, that we get hit with this. It's traffic calming, homelessness. Those are the ones that we get hit with quite a bit. And so just long-term thinking is that, do we need to start planning for that? Is that number going to keep rising? I guess what I'm asking. I'm not saying it's happening tomorrow. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Barbara and Josh.
Well, in thinking about all that you were talking about that we do have available, it's not been that long ago that we didn't have any of this available.
You're right. Yes, ma'am.
It's really been created in a relatively short time. I was trying to think about the first that we started out even being concerned about. I guess it must have been the 17th Street facility. Maybe JCOC was the
The
first.
Lighthouse Center. Yes, ma'am.
Lighthouse, and that was a nonprofit. But for the city to have developed all of this programming, it's happened in a relatively short period of time. And it's amazing that you have so much that we do have to offer. And it's not going to be something that we're ever going to cure. It's always going to be with us because people continue to have these situations come, and we might be headed for some tough times shortly. But I really want to compliment you on what all you have been able to do in such a short period of time. And we can't solve all of the problems, but you're doing a lot. And I just am amazed at what you have been able to do. And I think you've probably been with it from the very beginning. But y'all done a great job. And I really compliment you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Josh, Cash, and then Amelia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And, one thing out of your presentation that really just struck me was your street outreach housing navigators. And did I hear you right when you said you had one team of 4 people for the entire city?
We have 4, yes, 1 team lead and 5 total.
5 total. For as big as a city. And I mean,
Yeah.
and you are the first thing is build and trust, and that is a people business. And I guess government's a people business in a lot of ways, but especially yours. And you can't be everywhere all the time, and I know it, and I think everybody else. We just need to appreciate how the demand has become so different and greater. I think even more so in the last 5-10 years than ever before. So there's a big demand on your service. So thank you for what you do.
Cash,
Thank
and then
you, sir.
Amelia.
As always, thank you for what you do. Your staff is truly amazing. I'm not a liaison, but I took a tour, and then I understood that we are not just providing a service to those that are homeless. This is actually a crime prevention agency. That's what you do. You actually help police, fire, EMS. And so with that being said, you had mentioned there was a shortage in staffing. And I think that number you said was 2. You had asked City Council before. I think we really need to look at that. And the reason why I say that is because that's crime prevention, right? And so if we can feed them, clothe them, and shelter them, then we improve the overall health and safety of our community. So thank you, Dr. Ruth. I appreciate what you do, and you've got a supporter here.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Amelia.
And Ruth,
You got promoted.
and
Thank you, sir.
and I want to thank you for all that you do. I've followed along. I was there when you did we built the HRC and the other off of Northampton Boulevard. And a lot of times you get people doing a NIMBY, not in my backyard. But one of the things we need to clarify is these people are not always criminals. They are going through certain stresses in their lives, and we're there to help. When I went to San Francisco, that's when it was sobering to see we have hardly any compared to what you see along those streets. We're really out there doing the best we can. In Town Center, I have, as part of my District 4, Captain Gordon, doing a great job. And we also have Roosevelt out there. We also have people that come to the city manager. You see Sheila Johnson. So it's a collective team that's doing this. And we need to make sure that people understand that there for the grace of God go I. So sometimes it bothers me when we're looking at them in that form of what they do out there. They're people too. And this is why people sometimes bring up, what are you going to do? Throw them out? Well, all we can do is educate them, show them the resources that we're doing. And our city is doing a pretty good job on that. I'm happy to see that you mentioned about partners and peers for pets, because a lot of these people do not want to go into a homeless shelter because that's their source of comfort, is their pet.
Yes, ma'am.
And as for many of us, so this is important that we become a little bit more tolerant, continue to get and enjoy the resources that we have. Overall, we are a blessed city. So this way we're blessing others. And thank you for going out to the encampments. I know some of the businesses don't like some of what they see. Because as I've talked with you last week, some of the things are not criminal per se. They're more like a nuisance. And that's a different line. So thank you all for all you do. And thank you for working with us for Town Center, for Cleveland. I have quite a bit out that way, but there's improvement. Thank you.
Amelia, if you could be so kind, in the central business district where you're at, they have a task force that has actually been very proactive with people involved. Could you touch on that a little bit?
Yes, we have the task force. We also have people, besides that, the Central Business District Group meet. We have Janie, who comes out working, and as I mentioned, we have Roosevelt, and we have a group. You see them monitoring. They have their little Town Center shirts on. And of course, for some people who are not used to seeing people out there doing this, at first they're wondering what's going on. But it has improved. From the first time I came back on council to where we are now, we're watching. We have eyes, ears, that you can see what you mentioned just over the weekend. Not only our ideas, but including what the community people, what the businesses are bringing to the table. How can we sit around and work on this together? So that is important. And
Thank you.
we're getting there.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I forgot, I had some more questions, but got caught up. So I agree with what you said about the pets, and I appreciate you mentioning that. There could be a support. I've actually talked to a number of people who, I've encountered who are living in a hotel or in another situation. I'm thinking of this one nice lady helped me, and we were talking, and she said she lived in a hotel, and she couldn't go to the shelters because she was not going to part from her dog, and I definitely understand that. So I think finding a way to bridge that gap is something that is really, really important and will help a lot of people. So I agree, and I'm very thankful. I wanted to call that out. But I have a question about the HRC. I'm asking this with a true open mind, but one of the things that I hear about I'm not familiar with the policy, so I wonder if you could explain it to us in a little greater detail. For those who are staying in the shelters, I know there's family space and there's individual beds. And are there group bunks in the HRC?
There are single or families, and they're separate, as you indicated, in different spaces.
And they're in different spaces.
Correct.
The single ones, are they bunks or are they?
We have both. We have bunks upstairs, and the new 32-bed expansion is, except for 3 bunks, everything else is individual because of mobility issues. We found so many people now are older experiencing homelessness, our single population, particularly the male single population. And so we did not do bunks for all of it. So we can house a lot more people.
That makes sense.
Or shelter more people.
And then one of the concerns that was raised with me was that if they arrive there or they're part of the program and they sleep there, then do they have to leave during the day?
They do not. That has been changed since we did the conversion of the 32 beds expansion, and people do not have to leave during the day.
So they can stay during the day?
Yes, sir, they can stay.
That's a misunderstanding. I think a lot of people in the community think that they have to leave. So the groups of people that are congregating, particularly in the area around the HRC, are doing so by choice. Or they may leave and go do some other things.
Correct, come back. They have freedom. They're not required to leave. We also, as you know, at the HRC have the Day Support Transitions Day Support Center. And so people are coming and going for showers and meal and to use laundry services. And they may be around because that program can serve up to 60 people a day. So that may be some of what the congregating is. It may not be people that are actually sheltered there, but coming for services.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Amelia?
One last thing, I was interested in when she mentioned along the corner of Independence and Virginia Beach Boulevard, we said, well, there's these women who are there panhandling. Well, that's their profession. It was interesting to hear. They come out, and that's what they do. Then they go back. And I thought they were homeless in need. A lot of them are housed, but they come out and panhandle. That was interesting to learn.
Yeah, they actually have organized groups that
Yes.
vans take them to certain places. Oh, yeah. I'll tell you what, this was a very good detailed presentation. It was extremely necessary. Homelessness is not unique to Virginia Beach, Hampton Roads. It's a national epidemic. And once again, it is a difficult thing to confront. I did do a tour of the garages at Town Center, and there were people living in the first floor of the parking garages. During the winter, they have the heat there, and they have electric outlets, and there's sanitary signs and everything, and people. There was a gentleman sleeping in the elevator and things of that nature. But once again, I think Michael hit it. You got to treat it with passion and empathy. And the fact is, being a Vietnam era veteran, a lot of the folks with PTSD, have alcohol and drug problems, and that's why they're reluctant to go into a shelter because they're not going to have access to that, and that's just a fact. But I am delighted that thank you, Barbara, for your observation. We have done a lot in the city, and no matter what we do, it may never be enough because of the magnitude of the problem and the complexities of human nature and things of that nature. But once again, Mr. Dehaney, I'm just going to ask if Chief Newdigate might be able to come down, because there's a perception out there that the police can just go into these places and take very proactive, and there's things our police can do, and there's things our police cannot do, and I really think it would be helpful just to bring it forward about what some of the frustrations the police have in dealing with this. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. I think some of the consideration, and we're actually going to talk about this in the next presentation, is that there is the ability for private property owners to give the police department authority to enforce trespassing violations on their property without having the business owner or the property manager immediately present, as long as it's marked and we give the appropriate notification for that private property. It's something as a practice for a number of reasons the police department had gotten away from years ago. But in light of the next presentation, it is something that we are in conversations with the city attorney about revising that, creating a new authorization letter that we can take out to those private businesses to give us an additional enforcement tool for those trespassing violations. And that's probably the best one that we would have in our arsenal, because many of the things that our unsheltered, our homeless are doing, it's not criminal. It is nuisance, but for the most part, it is not criminal, and that makes it very challenging for us.
Let me ask you, what about, public property? We had a situation at a library not too long ago, and then even, the public garages.
And I think, once again, it becomes very challenging from a legal perspective. Who has the actual authority to enforce that on behalf of the city? And it always results in a conversation. Do we have the legal authority as the representatives of the city to take enforcement action? Have they been properly notified? And will it stand up in court? And I think that is the challenge that we're all trying to resolve is, are we legally sound and we're not going to get ourselves in a lawsuit? And one of the things we need to be very careful about, it's not just the one individual, but it's groups such as the ACLU that may look at a pattern of activity that the city is engaging in and try to bring suit. And we want to make sure, we would like to try to avoid that and make sure that our practices are sound, caring, empathetic, but justified.
Yeah, it's one thing if an officer sees a crime in action, and another thing showing up at a scene where somebody might have said somebody did something. Just got to be careful about putting our officers at risk, in terms of, legal action, civic act, liability and things of that nature, I think. But once again, I think it's it's a frustration for the police, and it's a frustration, for, the people that feel their businesses are being, but once again, I got to say it's the cards that are dealt to us. And Chief, that was great. I know you got another presentation coming up.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, members of council, at the request of several members of City Council, the next briefing is going to give City Council an overview of the oceanfront crime conditions and some of our enforcement challenges. Just as a point of note, council should note that there is going to be a closed session briefing where some of the potential considerations in terms of strategies and tactics. We're going to talk to council more about that to get some more of the legal details talked about as well. So just be mindful of that as well. So the next voice you'll hear will be Chief Newdigate, who will start the presentation. Go ahead, Chief.
Hey, appreciate it, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. Thank you to the staff that's here with me on behalf of VBPD. So we are here to talk about the oceanfront crime. But I think we would like to do is just start off, take a look at overall violent crime while I have this opportunity so that we have a true understanding as a city and a police department where we are. So if we remember last year, we had a 21% reduction in reported violent crime. That was the lowest number of violent crimes reported in the last 5 years. We are continuing that trend. All the data is current through May the 14th, and we currently, this year, are showing continued reductions in violent crime. But we are here to talk about the oceanfront, so let's talk about what that looks like. And I really wanted to get visual, to give everybody an opportunity to really understand where we have been over the last 5 years. So in 2020, we had 65 reported Part 1 violent crimes. Those are your homicides, your rapes, your robberies, your aggravated assaults. 2021, 52. 2022, 40. Slight uptick in 2023 with 49. Last year, 2024. So that is half of where we started in 2020. And so far this year, through 5/14, that number is 12. So let's talk about shooting victimization, because that is obviously a huge topic. So 2020, we had 16 shooting victims, 1 fatal, 15 non-fatal. In 2021, that number was 12, 1 fatal, 11 non-fatal. Through a lot of great work, technology initiatives, strategies, cooperations from our partners, that number was 3 non-fatal shootings. 2023, that number dropped to 2. 2024, 2. As of 5/14 of this year, that number is 3. But let's just go back and remember where we started. There has been tremendous progress in violent crime and shooting violence reduction in our oceanfront area. Something that I don't think gets much notice. We put it out, tried to get attention to it, but we went 343 days without a person shot in our resort area. So if you look at the numbers and the averages up top, so in 2020, when we started our new initiatives, on average, we were having a shooting victim, a person shot, every 25.3 days, roughly 1 a month. In 2024, last year, on average, every 6 months, 189 days between actual shooting victims. So I would say that there has been great progress. So let's talk about the technology. Council has invested heavily in ShotSpotter across the city. The oceanfront is definitely one of those areas. 2022 was the first full year of coverage and implementation. We had 35 activations for captured gunshots in the resort area. 2023, that number was 25. Last year, 17, half of where we started. And we are currently sitting at 11, and half of these came from activations during this past week 17 or spring break weekend. So just to put it back into perspective, because I know there is a lot of concern, and I know there is a lot of individuals trying to frame what is occurring at the oceanfront, but we can't lose sight of the fact that last year crime was down 32.7% in the oceanfront compared to the previous year, half of what it was in 2020, and the lowest amount of violent crime incidents in the last 5 years. So Captain Wessler and the preceding captains, Captain McBrien, their OCOP officers go out every day, and they do a fantastic job to manage a number of difficult, nuanced situations in our resort area. And they do, we owe them a round of applause and appreciation. And that's where we are from a factual data perspective. Now, where we are currently, we're up 3 offenses compared to this time last year. But as we remember, last year was the best year in 5. So we're still doing pretty good. That's the factual information. That's the data. It doesn't address what the challenges are and what the perception is. And we know that coming into usually March and April, we have challenges. And I think the challenges that we have during that time period, unfortunately, cast an aspersion over our resort area for the entire year. And this is what is perceived as our resort area. And these firearms, the 53 arrests, the 28 firearms that were seized and taken into our custody just over the April 26th, 27th period. And I will tell you that this was a lot of great work by the officers down there, because every one of these interactions to recover one of these firearms could result in a tragic outcome. And it's not just, well, 28 firearms, and I will tell you that had it not rained, I think we could have doubled this number. The sheer number of firearms that are being brought to our oceanfront is incredibly alarming. And it's not just the firearms, it's the history associated with them. It's the individuals that are bringing them to our oceanfront. Here's one of the firearms that on the previous slide that was used in a homicide in Richmond. Utilizing technology that council has provided with our National Integrated Ballistic Information Network, every firearm that comes into our custody, we test fire, we compare the cartridge casings, it goes into a national database and tells us if it's been used in other crimes. That gun that we recovered killed somebody up in Richmond and made its way down here. Another one used in an attempt homicide in Northumberland County. So one of the challenges that we have is, historically, week 17, it's been called College Beach Weekend. I will tell you that that is a misnomer. It is not College Beach Weekend. It may be spring break, but the individuals that we spoke to down there that weekend, and we were down there engaging with a lot of individuals. Where's everyone from? Where are you going to school? These are not individuals that are going to school. They're not college kids that are coming to visit the oceanfront. These are individuals that we refer to as day trippers. They are coming from somewhere in the Commonwealth or somewhere where they can drive to Virginia Beach within a day's travel. It may be Maryland. It may be North Carolina. The other challenge that we have is it's not always week 17. Sometimes it is that first warm Friday night that we have no advance notice that we're going to have a large crowd. And when that does happen, we have to pool resources from all the outlying precincts, send them down to the oceanfront to try to manage something that we didn't know was coming our way. And it's hard to predict when that great warm Friday or Saturday is going to occur, and it's not going to rain. But what I really want to show you here is this was not week 17. This was April 5th, and we had a large crowd, 17th and Atlantic, and we know right to the left what is not captured in the video is the 17th Street Park. A lot of young individuals in the park as well. So what you're going to see when we show the video is at some point an individual in the crowd in the 17th Street Park is going to produce a firearm. That is going to cause the crowd to run. Crowd is going to start running towards the Dairy Queen. Then that individual is going to fire shots at another group of individuals. You're going to see our officers, your officers react as the crowd is running away. Your officers are running towards the threat, where they ending up chasing down and arresting a 19-year-old young man from, I believe he was from Georgia on this one, and taking him into custody. So, Lieutenant, if you'll. So as they run, our officers run to the danger. They end up making an arrest. And one of the things, and I know you hear it, I hear the conversations, I'm part of the conversations, I see the communication is we need more officers down there. Well, what I would offer, if you'll, is at the time of this occurrence, there was not one, not two, not three, not four, not five, not 6, not 7, 8, not 9, but 10 uniformed, highly visible VBPD officers right there, and the individual did not care. And the point that I'm making is police presence is not going to solve this alone. That the uniform, the threat of incarceration is no longer a deterrent for some of the individuals that are coming to the oceanfront. 10 officers there. Would number of 11 made a difference? I would offer probably not. Here's another one. We talk about it's not just week 17. This was just about a month ago, May 17th, a warm night in our oceanfront area. And you will notice that this individual right here, I think the situation is he took umbrage to the fact that the vehicle was not yielding to him in the crosswalk. So the response is pull a firearm. And he pulls a firearm, and I'm sure we all see that in that frame is a clearly marked bright blue bike that says police. And on top of that bright blue bike is a VBPD officer wearing the uniform of the day. And as we know, we have put our officers down there in the blue two-tone shirts for high visibility. So I asked them, when we saw this, I said, what is the distance of the crosswalk? Ladies and gentlemen, it's 10 feet. Within 10 feet, you've got an officer, and this young man from, a 19-year-old man from, I think this was from Maryland, pulls the firearm, and our officers engage him, encounter him, direct him to drop his firearm. He flees. There's a resulting foot pursuit. During the foot pursuit, he discharges the gun. Luckily, it was pointed down into the ground. I believe at some point he falls. We're able to take him into custody, find out that this gun here is what we, has a switch, as we call it. It's capable of full auto fire. Members of council, mayor, vice mayor, we averted a tragedy because there is no doubt in my mind we could have had another VBPD officer shot, killed. We could have had a member of our community shot or killed, and we could have ended up in an officer-involved shooting, having to protect our lives or someone else for this community. And it was by the grace of God that we took him into custody without incident. But once again, these are just two recent incidents. 10 officers on one, within 10 feet of the other. And we are part of the solution, but law enforcement alone is not going to solve this issue that we find ourselves in. So we are going to talk about curfew. I think it's an option that we have to at least discuss and put on the table, because without additional strategies, we're going to continue to get the same outcome. So once again, this is probably the best video I have, so we used it even though it's from 2022. This was a warm Monday. Out of the blue, I think there was a social media post that encouraged individuals to come to the oceanfront, and that quick, it can draw several hundred. So you'll see the Dairy Queen lots crowded, the boardwalks crowded, and I believe at some point a young man threw a set of fireworks. Of course, everybody believed it was gunfire, and then we have a mass exodus. And even though this is from 2022, for this past week 17, we witnessed this at least 3 times. Several hundred groups of young teens that were stampeding. And Brian, if you can go ahead and show that video, please. So what I would offer is that we are incredibly lucky that we did not have anyone seriously injured or killed when we have conditions like this, but it's probably going to be a matter of time when we have several hundred youth that decide to run down in a congested area like this. We're going to end up with injuries. It's a matter of time. So one of the things we wanted to look at options by other resort cities, what's working, what's not working. So we took a look at Ocean City, Daytona Beach, Miami Beach, Panama City Beach, and Myrtle Beach. And what we found out is that they are all experiencing similar challenges. Many of them have the same responses that we do. They upstaff officers. They try to put as much police visibility and deterrence down there as they possibly can. What you will see is the bullet point items that are bolded and italicized are things that we are not doing, that they have adopted to try to get some resolution. So in Ocean City, they have designated special event zones to help them manage some of the unsafe driving. The research that we were able to find, they indicate that it's allowed them to curb some of the participation in their pop-up car rallies by limiting and reducing speed limits and higher fines for moving violations within those designated special event zones. Rigorous enforcement of parking violations, and as I mentioned earlier, something that we are now researching is the use of those trespass authorization letters for various private or various properties where we are experiencing repeat and recurring issues. Daytona Beach, they are using cease and desist letters in addition to the special event zones. So it's something that we would like to work with the city attorney's office, that we are starting to try to do a lot of research into these individuals that post on social media and encourage large groups of individuals to come unpermitted, unsanctioned to specific locations within our city. And then we are forced to respond with a number of resources from police, fire, many times our public works, to see if there is a way to address that. Panama City, the only thing that we saw from Panama City that they were doing differently is the overnight beach closures and designated areas with enhanced penalties and vehicle impoundment. And they indicate that they are doing security checkpoints in their high traffic areas. So I know we were having conversations with Mr. Stiles and his team, pretty much any and everything that we can do to look at from a legal perspective to give us options on how we may want to proceed as a city and as a police department. But this is current. This is a headline from Panama City Beach. Panama City Beach can no longer be a spring break town after multiple shootings. That's the spring break. Myrtle Beach, what you'll see is doing many of the same things that we are doing, achieving many of the same outcomes. The only thing that they have done currently is alter their main artery, Ocean Boulevard, which would be our Atlantic Avenue, to singular vehicle traffic on one way. But I will tell you, we are watching Myrtle Beach intently to see what their response is, because this is what is going on in Myrtle Beach currently and happened this past spring. 1 dead, 11 injured in a mass shooting, officer-involved shooting where the Myrtle Beach officer was forced to respond and shoot the individual that had perpetrated the mass shooting. 13-year-old shot in the leg and arm in Myrtle Beach mass shooting. Those are the headlines that we do not want, cannot tolerate in Virginia Beach. So I left Miami Beach for last because they are probably the most proactive, assertive city and department in addressing these conditions. In 2023, they had some relatively unprecedented violence on Ocean Drive. And as a result, they came together and made decisions as a city and not just a police department that this was no longer going to be tolerated, and enacted a very rigorous spring break curfew that is carried on to this day, and a number of other things. It is really, in Miami Beach, It is really not just public safety. It is a citywide response for those designated problematic days and weekends. They have a midnight curfew. They have a special event zone that allows enhanced towing violations and increased penalties, checkpoints at their beach entrances with restricted hours. They have strict ordinance that allows them to do bag checks on their beach. They are closing their parking garages during these times to non-residents and implementing higher parking and towing rates. And one of the things, they are not shy about advertising that this is the philosophy of the city. I read that they spent over $400,000 on their marketing and media strategy. One of the things that we don't have currently that, having those discussions with Mr. Stiles and, what it would take to engage our representatives to go back to the General Assembly for some legislative changes. But they do have special event zones. And Florida is one where many of these cities are utilizing them. And what it allows them to identify a certain geographical region for a temporal period of time. And it allows them to double the statutory fines for non-criminal traffic violations, allows police officers to impound vehicles for up to 72 hours for non-criminal traffic and criminal traffic. It will allow them to do and enforce occupancy limits on both private and public property within the zone. Historically, that has not been a police function. We have to rely on our code enforcement and a number of other individuals and entities within the city, but it gives additional responsibility to the police. And I think this is a big one here that absolutely have to find a way to see if we can get our General Assembly to consider this for us, is that when we have these individuals that are promoting and holding unpermitted, unsanctioned, unplanned events within our city without the appropriate notification, permitting, resources, safety plans, that if we can identify them, we can hold them accountable for all the monetary damages that we would have to put in place for a response from police, fire, EMS, sanitation, and others. So this is the letter that Miami Beach sent out in 2024, making it quite clear that there is going to be a curfew in place during their spring break weekend, what that special event zone is. I think there's also a provision that they limited alcohol sales for carryout after 6 p.m. And from their website, this is their advertising, and they are not shy that parking is going to be expensive, that curfews are going to be in place. There is going to be a substantial police presence with security checkpoints and DUI enforcement. And Miami Beach seems to be the only one, as of right now, that has a handle on what is occurring in all of our resort cities during our spring break period of March and April. And what we're incredibly concerned about is as these other cities become more proactive, more assertive in their responses, and implement strategies to curtail the large crowds in their cities, who is going to be the destination area that's going to bear the brunt of that? And we're incredibly concerned from a law enforcement perspective that it could be us. And it's not just our resort areas. I just saw this the other day, just 4 hours north of where we are, that DC implemented a 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. curfew in their wharf area for all teens 17 and under due to the amount of violence and disorder that they were experiencing. So this is no surprise to to everyone at the table. What we have done, robust police staffing, visibility, partnered with the SO, partnered with VSP, cancel off days. But once again, whether it's 100 officers, 200 officers, 300 officers, when you have 10 officers in immediate vicinity and they pull a gun and shoot at a crowd, or they're within 10 feet of an officer, more officers alone is not going to solve this issue. Traffic flushing, I hear zero tolerance. Well, there's a time for zero tolerance, and there's a time for us to use common sense and judgment. And, some of those things have been taken away from us, like the ability to enforce jaywalking. One of the biggest complaints that we do get at the oceanfront that Captain Westland or his team get is the open marijuana use. And that is it's a civil infraction. It is not a criminal infraction. We can't legally detain someone if they wanted to walk away from us. And I'll be honest, it's not worth the time of our officers to stop someone. We may ask them to put it out that that we have complaints that there's a family, but we don't have the legal authority to address that. And I would say that, when it comes to zero tolerance, by the time we have 3,000 to 4,000 14 to 24-year-olds in an area, it's crowd management. It's not enforcement. We've had the event programming, and we've had some coordinated messaging, but we are still getting the same issues. Even though crime is down, I would say that a lot of that is because of the great work of the officers down there in partnership with the community and the different stakeholders. To take the number of guns that they do, and what you saw was just for that weekend. It's not what happens on a daily weekend in March or April when we're dealing with these situations. But I think these are the implementation measures that at least have to be discussed. Say it one more time, members of council, that we will do everything we can from the law enforcement perspective, but without additional tools or additional strategies, we're going to get the same outcome.
Mr. Mayor, before you turn it over for questions, just note again that there is a closed session briefing to talk about some of the legal ramifications associated with this. It would make sense for council to get a full holistic picture of all the legal issues associated with this, but eventually, if council wants us to move in a certain direction, we would have to come out publicly and state that and present to the public our stance in the future.
Okay, great, Worth.
Thank you, Mayor Dyer and Chief Newdigate and Chief Adams and Mr. Captain West for the 2nd Precinct. Thank you very much for this presentation and for your continued work on this. I know it's not easy at all, as evidenced by the other resort markets up and down the East Coast, but no doubt it's under conversation with a lot of folks here. So can I have a quick discussion about why we post the guns? Because some in the community say, why do we advertise, quote unquote, what's happening? And then the argument against that is probably your argument, which I think is true, is if you come to the oceanfront, you're going to be arrested if you brandish your gun illegally.
I think 2 reasons. We want it to be a deterrent. We want folks to know that if they bring firearms to our oceanfront and they are not carrying them within 100% compliance with the law, there is a good opportunity that you're going to be interdicted. We're going to seize the firearm, and there's going to be criminal penalties. And I would say the other reason, had we not posted them, I think there's a good chance we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. And come next April, law enforcement would be trying to deal with it with our other city partners, and we would experience the same results.
So just a couple more follow-up, and just this slide right here, I think we all ought to be talking about, like you prepared us for. I've heard some negatives against a curfew because that hurts businesses that are down there at the oceanfront open, trying to make a living selling their goods and services. So I would have maybe some pushback on the curfew. Some of these things I know we'll be talking about in closed on what's allowed and what's not allowed, but I do like what Miami's doing. I really do. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councilman.
Okay, if I can say this though, Worth, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Dehaney, Florida's a home rule state, and that makes a significant amount of difference about the latitude of what we can do.
Yeah.
And I really think that going forward, if I could say, I was just on the phone the other day with Mayor Jimmy Gray at Hampton. Donnie Tuck and I started a mayor's group on youth violence a number of years ago, that between COVID and a few other things. But we're going to reconstitute. But let me tell you, I got to give credit to Patrick Dehaney and the other chief executive officers. They have gotten together and they identified a whole bunch of social reasons that really affect youth violence and, you know, things of that nature. But once again, I think it's a matter of that crime does not honor any border. And it's going to take a unified, you know, approach. And, you know, from what I understand, the police departments have been, you know, sharing intelligence, and some of the other cities have looked at us and said, oh boy, we got to step up our game in terms of intelligence, preemption. And Mayor Gray pointed out to me the other day, they're just having flash groups come together, and they're having the same, you know, considerations that we're having. But once again, I think if we're going to go to the General Assembly, it might be better if we went as a collection, you know, from the mayors and other chairs in the group. And we're going to start the conversations again because, you know, summer is upon us, and we want people coming to the beach. We want everybody coming to the beach, but we've got to make sure it's a safe beach. Sure. Yeah, Rosemary.
Excellent presentation.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you so much, and for all the officers that are out there who run towards danger to save us. It's my understanding that we had the license plate readers. When people come into the city, we can read the license plates.
Yes, ma'am.
So that we can pick up the bad folks. We don't want, you know, criminals that have been identified. What's going on with that program?
Yes, ma'am. License plate reader is in full effect. We have, I think, important to remember that the program is really bifurcated. There are stationary cameras, which we refer to as flock. That's the current provider. There's 25 of those currently throughout the city. But every marked police car that you see out there also is capturing that license plate data. So we really have 240 mobile license plate readers as well. So we have a very robust network, and what it alerts us to are, of course, stolen cars, warrants attached to the plates, missing persons and such. So those license plate readers are down there. We'll definitely, as we were having a conversation with our IT folks, and I believe we have identified additional funding in the IT CIP to move forward with a second phase of stationary license plate reader cameras. So we will be taking a hard look at the justification for those locations, and I'm sure our resort area will be one of those that we are taking a hard look at. But we had a shooting that occurred that Friday night, and we were able to locate one of the vehicles involved in that shooting and ended up taking individuals into custody because it hit on a license plate reader. And we knew that those cars involved in a shooting late Friday night, early Saturday morning had not left the resort area. Well, actually, I take that back. We knew one had left because we were picking it up on flock cameras in Northern Virginia, but we were picking the other one up on local cameras within the city of Virginia Beach. So we knew which one to focus on, and that was the one that we found down there on, was it 17th, 21st? And we were able to take those individuals into custody involved in the shooting the previous night.
You mentioned working more with Virginia State Police. You want to comment some more on that?
Absolutely. I mean, if we have intelligence that we are concerned about a certain period of time, we can ask them to come down and augment our efforts like we do with our partners at the VBSO. But one of the big challenges is many of these are, as the mayor alluded, they are pop-up events. We are not getting the intelligence information. And it used to be, and we talk about it, I know the media is here, but we used to be able to monitor open source social media, that a lot of this would be put out on Instagram or other open source channels. They have went underground because they know the police monitor it. Many of the things that they communicate now you have to pay a fee to get into the group for them to push out information on what that looks like. So it's made us very challenging for us to have any intelligence about when we may expect a large influx of individuals into the oceanfront that we were not planning on and did not have sufficient resources. So it makes it very hard to ask the SO or VSP, hey, can you just, have a whole bunch of officers standing around in case we need you? They are like us, and I know that you know this, but your police department is hurting right now. Where we were really going in the right direction and we were down to 40 vacancies, that is now up to 80. And we are losing officers, unfortunately, at a pretty exponential rate.
Yeah, Michael and then Josh.
Thank you, Chief, and I'm very grateful for the presentation. There's a lot of thoughts and feedback that I could share, but I think we're all still processing this, and I have great deference to you and to your colleagues for your understanding and approach to the issue, as well as so many of the other folks who are involved in the discussion. But I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I do have one question. We're talking about a constituency of young people principally, and I'm just wondering, this isn't exclusively on the police. I think it's a community question, but it's not lost on me, and I'm going to introduce them in a moment, but we have some interns here from Green Run Collegiate School, and they're juniors and I think a senior, and they're about to graduate, and we're talking about a demographic here that I think a lot of us around this table don't fully understand. And I'm just curious if or how we could tap in. I know that you can't necessarily go and do a survey of the people who are doing these violent crimes at the oceanfront, but how are we, or could we better understand what it is that these young people are experiencing in their lives, what it is that they're looking for in terms of engagement or things to do, or how they spend their time, and so that somehow we can, I know there's the Youth Violence Prevention Task Force, and I think they've done some good work, and I think they came back and said pretty much the issue is connection to something. But how can we better understand what this slide calls a juvenile and young people, so that we can help to cultivate an environment where these types of things don't happen? I mean, it's not just a law enforcement question, it's more broad than that. And I don't think it's lost on me, I don't think it's lost to even the young people who are here, that we're talking about people that aren't, we're talking about them, maybe not always with them.
Councilman, that is a very complex question, as you know, and I think from our perspective, that is why we have a very robust youth services unit. We have 5 sworn assigned to that, and I know you've all received the presentation on everything that we're trying to do as a police department, not just enforcement, but to ensure public safety. But I think our efforts are focused on our youth within the city of Virginia Beach. But unfortunately, when we are a resort destination, that is a small fraction of the individuals that are coming to our resort area. They're coming from DC, Maryland, Northern Virginia. I don't know, honestly, how we would ever impact them and get our message out from a understanding perspective that on what the city of Virginia Beach could do to address some of those concerns.
I think Councilmember Vellucci, if you think back, a lot of the tactics previously involved working with the colleges, the universities, the military, right, when it was a traditional spring break crowd. But it's not that anymore. It's flash mobs, pop-ups, and literally sometimes the chief is telling me the intelligence Thursday night that we're seeing 40 to 10,000 likes on a particular pop-up at the oceanfront for tomorrow evening. Sometimes that's how the information comes to us, and they're not necessarily tied to traditional groups to where you could say, oh, we reach out to the presidents of the universities to say, hey, we need to get some of your liaisons here to talk to these kiddos. It's fractured. So I think we're at the height of something that where everybody's trying to figure out how best to manage it and how best to entertain it.
And just as a follow-up, I'm not being critical, but I think we need to get smart on how young people are connecting and communicating and spending their time. more smart, and then how to possibly tap into that and reach them with a message. The message could be don't come, or if you come, these are the whatever. But also, I don't know. I mean, I know this is a bigger conversation, but I'm just wondering if we're doing the best we can do to actually tap into what they're thinking and experiencing. And you're right. There's a broad vast spectrum of people who are visiting, but we're talking about the people who, in this case, who are committing violent crimes, and that's a narrower constituency.
I want to add one thing to your comment, Mr. Bellucci. We could obviously do better, but the police department does do that, right? So to the extent that they could find out that there's a certain organizer and promoter, they create fake profiles, they create all kinds of things to get into that person's DMs, direct messages, and then they contact them and they say, hey, we're here, you're trying to bring a event here or promote a certain meetup in Virginia Beach. Here are some of the rules to follow. And sometimes the police department even follows that intelligence back to find a physical address, and they send resources down to that person's home to kind of discourage them from bringing certain activities to Virginia Beach. So they do that. It's just a lot of it is when it's dealing with folks that are coming from Maryland and Baltimore, and it's originating from there, it gets a lot more complicated.
And my final comment, I don't think it's, as I mentioned in the beginning, I don't think it's only a police responsibility. I think it's probably city communications. Other people who are not affiliated with the city government maybe are some of our attraction. I don't know. I think there's other ways to do it too.
Hey, Josh, and then let's get closed after that.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Chief, and everybody in the audience and law enforcement. But I think it's not just young people coming down. These are people coming down with the intention of causing somebody else harm. And I mean, you can see it by the weapons they're bringing down. And you said you could probably have picked up 2 or 3 times that amount had you?
Yes, sir. Had it not rained that night, I'm confident that the officers have been out, and that number could have been close to double.
So I think, with this stuff, like the suggestions for our consideration, these are meant to help bring, young ladies like your interns and other youth who want to come down to our resort and have a great time and not cause trouble or hurt somebody. I'm looking at some of this stuff is outside of our control. The special event zone, anything that needs like legislation maybe, but I'm wondering about these parking recommendations and what those really mean, where they come from, is it really just about discouraging access, and is it just trying to get a hold of the number of people in a given space? I know we've got resident concerns about parking rates and the on-season, and feelings about whether or not it should be free or discounted. I know we've had rate studies in the past tell us whether or not we are competitive in this way. I know we've got pressures on our parking fund, our enterprise fund. So I don't know what those pieces are. If those are within our control and we can maybe dive a little deeper on those, I'd be interested. But anyway, thank you again.
You're welcome, Councilman.
Yeah, let me just close and then we'll get into closed. Let me just say, we are here today confronting it. And once again, we have some good statistics, but once again, we got to play chess, not checkers. We got to be ready we got to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And, but once again, just like with the homeless situation, we came up with strategies that, like Barbara said, that weren't here a couple of years ago. We put into place, they're working. And, Michael, I think you have a glowing example in your district with Lynn Haven Mall, because I remember being on this council when they had all kinds of youth issues going on. And we came together with a strategy to the point where now, correct me if I'm wrong, but Lynn Haven Mall is one of the most bustling, successful malls on the East Coast. So once we knew about the problem, we will find a way.
Thank you, Mayor.
And, I got 100% confident in that. So at this point, thank you very much. And
Thank you, Mayor.
thank you, Chief. And Mr. Dehaney, thank you for putting these. They were lengthy, but necessary. And I really think we got a lot of good information now. Any council liaison reports right now? How about council comments then? Michael?
Thank you, Mayor. Well,
Please, hey, would all the police and sheriff's people, please stand up and be acknowledged. Yeah, we got a gallery here. Thank you. My apologies, Mike.
No, none needed. That was a nice recognition and well-deserved. I just wanted to take a moment to, as I mentioned before, to introduce Amaya and Benita from Green Run Collegiate. They're here as part of their internship. They're spending the day with us and here for the workshop and for the formal session. And I'm glad they're here. And Green Run Collegiate is an amazing school and program that we all have familiar with. And I'm just really glad you're here. And they may have been prompting some of my questions today, which I also appreciate. And just value your input and your perspective, and glad you're here, so welcome.
Yeah, please stand up and be recognized. This is the future. Well said, Michael. Amelia? You have your hand up?
No, it's
Okay.
calling to stand up.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll be quick because on the heels of the last presentation, I have to thank the Convention Visitors Bureau and the Resort Management Office. Last weekend was a very successful jackalope festival, carnival, a lot of energy, a lot of people. I don't know the count yet, but it's a great weekend for our city. And then looking forward to this weekend, sand soccer, 90 to 100,000 visitors, incredible 80-some soccer fields. It's an incredible weekend here, Legacy. So look forward to seeing all that this weekend. So it's a lot of good things, of course, going on at the oceanfront.
Hey, Rosemary?
So speaking of pop-up parties, a few weeks ago, we had a lot of people come out from Red Mill complaining about a party in their neighborhood. It was incredibly disruptive. It was a terrible event for the Red Mill neighborhood. And I just want to let everybody know how our city and staff really stepped up to hold these people accountable. And I talked to Mr. Stiles yesterday about it. I guess it was zoning took them to court. Was it zoning that took them to court?
Yes, we took them to court for zoning violations, well, and for police violations, and we've got a temporary injunction through September, and we'll be going back to court to follow up after that.
So they have temporary injunction till September, and then we're going to go after a permanent injunction. And they had planned on having, believe it or not, another one of these horrible, big, disruptive parties this coming Saturday night, even after all that they had done and being reined in, and they weren't stopping. They just were keeping it up. So hopefully now they will absolutely stop. And all the city departments, not all, but a lot of city departments came together, and they are attacking it from all sides. So we really are stepping up and taking care of our neighborhoods and looking out for folks, including what we just heard today. So I just really want to applaud our city attorney staff and the departments have come together to hold these people accountable.
Yeah, we are fixing these problems.
Yeah, I do remember something else is happening. It's a June 5th that I'm sure you've heard about the boxer, Keyshawn Davis. So his boxing match is on Saturday, but just so our special people in blue know that on June 5th, they're going over to Pin Boys, and from about 11 to 2.
I'm going to be there at 10 o'clock.
Well, they're starting now at 11.
Oh, we're 11?
It changed to 11, and
I'll have some coffee before.
You better get
I
a
go.
nap.
I'm gonna put my sketches on for a little, but they're coming out just to, acknowledge Virginia Beach as well, because Norfolk is their main, but we feel Virginia Beach is important. So they're coming out, and we asked how many, about 300 are coming to that. And we thank Nancy Hellman and the convention, they're aware of it and making sure that they will be safe and there will be people at least this group and the sheriff to be around. I use the right word, pinboard, because I called it pinwheels first, but pinboards. So we'll be there.
Okay, anybody else, Josh?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This weekend, Saturday, busy day in Chicks Beach. There's a Chicks Beach annual 5K. I think you came out last year. And it's been a really popular sellout kind of event. And another fundraiser for the Chicks Beach Volunteer Rescue Squad later that evening is Party at the Point. Some really great community advocates in Chicks Beach organize it every year. But I wanted to mention, importantly, on Friday, I believe it's Friday at 5:30, the Bayside Rec Center is going to be dedicated in the name of former Councilman Louis Jones. So that I believe is at 5:30 on Friday, June 6th. Well, I've got it in my calendar at 5:30, so I won't be late.
5:30 to 7.
I really, and plus I'm bringing my kids with me, so they can't be late either.
Okay, 6 o'clock.
Yeah, it's 6, or if it takes you longer to get it ready, it's 5:30. So,
Or if you want to see.
that's right.
Yeah. Barbara?
I will not be able to attend that event, and I'm so sorry I won't. But it's coming at the same time that the Creed's PTA is holding their event to acknowledge the 85th anniversary of Creed School. And I'll be there to read the proclamation from the city. This Creed School has been there for a long time. I started first grade there, and both of my sons and all 5 of my grandchildren all went through there. So it's great for the community, but a lot's going on around, and there are unfortunately conflicts sometimes.
I'll pass along your regards.
Okay, anybody else? Let me just say that on last Saturday was the 6th anniversary of the 531 tragedy. And we had a ceremony, right in the back at the gazebo there. And once again, it's a continuing recognition of probably the darkest day in the history of Virginia Beach. But once again, we are there for the families, victims, and the people that were in the building, and we will remember them in perpetuity. And Michael Eulies, we're making some incredible progress on the memorial that's being built. We're putting $14 million into it. And once again, it's the idea of coming together as a community to promote healing and remembering. And Manager Doheny read the names. We had a moment of silence. We had bagpipers, and just being able to engage with the community to let them know that the city is still with them. So I just wanted to say that. Okay, thank you. How about council agenda review?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I am feeling a rocket docket here. On the ordinances, there's 3 items only. Is everybody okay with those 3 items? And then under planning, there was 1 item from District 7 that's been withdrawn. So are you
That's
okay
correct.
with withdrawal?
I'm okay with that.
Everybody okay with the other 3 items? Okay, everything's on consent.
There we go. At this point, the chair will entertain a motion to recess into a closed session pursuant to exemptions of open meeting allowed by section 2.2, 3711A Code of Virginia as amended for the following purposes. Legal matters, consultation of legal counsel employed or retained by the public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel pursuant to section 2.2, 3711A8, and that's oceanfront public safety and Atlantic Park. Legal matters. Consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual or probable litigation where such consultation or briefing in an open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body pursuant to section 2.2, 3711A7, Atlantic Park, and publicly held property. Discussions or consideration of the acquisition of real property for public purpose or the disposition of public held property where the discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body pursuant to section 2.2, 3711A3, and that would be District 6 and District 2. And personal matters, discussions, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation from specific public officers, appointees, or employees of the public body pursuant to section 2.2, 3711A1, and that's council appointments, boards, commissions, committees, authorities, agencies, and appointees. Do I have a motion?
Aye.
Second.
moved.
That was one enthusiastic aye.
I wanted to beat everyone.
All right, and Worth is the second. Hey, thank you all, folks. Okay.
Councilmember Lucci.
Aye.
Councilmember Cummings.
So I won.
Councilmember Hutchinson.
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson Green.
So moved. No, aye.
Councilmember Remick. Councilmember Ross Taylor. Councilmember Brown.
Aye.
Councilmember Schulman.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wilson. Mayor Dyer.
Aye. Okay, we are recessed into close. Okay, folks, we are about ready to get going. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Okay, if we could all stand, if you're able to, for the invocation. Heavenly Father, you are always with us and beside us. Be with us this evening as we consider the fears of our great city. Give us the patience to listen, the wisdom to decide, and the strength to act. Amen. And if we could do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Oh, if we could also, if you don't mind, if we have a moment of silence for all of those who paid the ultimate price to protect our great city. Thank you all very much. And Madam Clerk, do we have a roll call?
Yes, Your Honor. All present excluding Councilmember Cummings.
Okay, thank you very much. Could I have a motion for the certification of the closed session?
So moved.
Oh, and a second. Okay, vote's open. Get it open.
Councilmember Hutchinson, and may I have your vote, please? Thank you. By a vote of 10-0, you certify the closed session to be in accordance with a motion to recess.
Okay, thank you very much. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the informal and formal session of May 6, 2025, special formal session of May 13, 25, informal and formal session of May 20th, 25, and the formal session of May 27th, 2025. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
All righty.
Sorry, bear with us just 1 second. Thank you. The vote is open. Councilmember Jackson Green.
Oh, yes.
May I have your vote, please? Thank you. By a vote of 10-0, you've approved the minutes as submitted.
Okay, thank you. This is the time the council enjoys where we get to honor people who deserve recognition. And the first one is the proclamation of LGBTQ Pride Month. And Jeff Ryder, are you here? Yeah, come on up. Yeah, both of you, come on up. There we go. And a request of my dear friend and colleague, Michael Berlucci, if he would do the honors.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm going to read this proclamation. And I just want to recognize Dr. Virginia Jankot, who's the chair of our Human Rights Commission in Virginia Beach. She's a former president and board member at Hampton Roads Pride and engaged in a lot of other community work. So I want to welcome both her and Hampton Roads Pride President Jeff Ryder to our City Council meeting tonight, and happy Pride Month. I'm going to read this proclamation. I'd like to just say a few brief words, and I believe Councilman Hutchison would like to join me in sharing some thoughts, and then we'll come down and present the proclamation to you and invite you to say a few words as well. Does that sound okay? Whereas the City of Virginia Beach remains committed to fostering an inclusive community that welcomes and empowers all in an effort towards continued improvement of the lives of our workforce and citizens, an LGBTQ liaison has been identified in each of our public safety departments and in the city manager's office. The liaisons examine the city's policies and services through an LGBTQ lens and provide a friendly ear to our constituents or staff wishing to bring LGBTQ-related issues to the attention of city government, which has led to the City of Virginia Beach receiving a perfect score on the Human Rights Campaign's Municipal Equality Index. And whereas this city's LGBTQ community members, through tireless volunteerism and advocacy, build strong community partnerships connecting LGBTQ youth, teens, adults, and families to supportive services that enhance the physical, mental, and social well-being of our entire community while demonstrating the capacity of the creative, social, economic, and influential force of the LGBTQ community and its allies to effect positive change where we live, where we work, and where we play. And whereas in the movement toward equal rights for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people, a historic turning point occurred on June 28, 1969 in New York City with the onset of the Stonewall riots. During these riots, LGBTQ citizens rose up and fought back against the discriminatory criminal laws that have since been declared unconstitutional. And whereas June is celebrated as LGBTQ Pride Month nationwide, and LGBTQ Pride Month celebrations have taken place around the country every June, and in other months too, to commemorate the beginning of the Stonewall riots. And whereas June 2025 will mark 37 years of summertime festivals known as Pride Fest, hosted by Hampton Roads Pride, who will host Pride at the Beach at the Oceanfront on Sunday, June 22nd, 2025. And whereas since its inception, Hampton Roads Pride has continued to celebrate unity, embrace diversity, and instill pride in our region's LGBTQ and allied communities by increasing visibility and promoting full human and civil rights for LGBTQ people. And whereas it is imperative that all people in the community, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity, are respected, safe, empowered, and supported by their peers, educators, and community leaders. Now, therefore, Robert M. Dyer, Mayor of the City of Virginia Beach, does hereby proclaim June 2025 as Pride Month in the City of Virginia Beach and calls upon all of our citizens to eliminate prejudice everywhere it exists and to join us in celebrating the great diversity of our community as we work to build a culture of inclusiveness and acceptance. So happy Pride Month. And I want to say thank you to Mayor Dyer for being the first mayor in our city's history to issue such a Pride proclamation. It's no small thing. It's symbolic, but it's also very important. As a member of the LGBTQ community myself, it's not lost on me that I have the opportunity to sit here and serve all the citizens, have been elected 3 times by the great people of our City of Virginia Beach, and it's a privilege and responsibility that I appreciate very much. We've come a long way. We've come a long way in the time that I've been engaged in Pride work and in civil and human rights. We still have a ways to go, but I think a moment like Pride Month is a chance for us to celebrate the progress we've made toward acceptance, toward inclusion, and toward empowerment for all people. I think at the end of the day, we all want to live in a community, in a world where we have each of us the opportunity to fulfill our full potential and have access to opportunity no matter who we are or who we love. And to me, that's what Pride Fest and Pride Month truly represents. I'm grateful to be joined by our partners in Pride, and there's so many out there as well. I've just seen so much growth in Virginia Beach, and and acceptance. A lot different than when I grew up here as a child, and I'm grateful for that. And that's the result of work that so many people have done before us, generations of people who we stand on their shoulders. And I'm grateful for the path that they led for all of us. I also want to share some good news that next year, Virginia Beach will be the host of the Stonewall Sports National Tournament. So there'll be LGBTQ athletes from all over the country coming to Virginia Beach to participate in athletic competitions and to enjoy our community and all the wonderful amenities that we know we have. And I'm excited and grateful to our CVB, to the Stonewall Sports team for making that possible. And so we have something to look forward to next year, and it's an exciting announcement. So thank you. I look forward to your comments, and if Mayor, if it's okay with you, I'd like to defer to Councilman Hutchison, who'd like to say a few words.
So, hello, Jeff. How you doing, buddy? Hello, ma'am. It's great to see y'all. Michael asked me if I wanted to say a couple words, and I'm honored to do that, because there are a lot of us that may not fit the part that you would think would be an ally, but I certainly am. I've grown up that way. I was raised that way. I think our differences and who we want to be with or who we want to love, it just makes us a richer people. And I think as Councilman Berlucci has said, we've come a long way. We've taken some steps backwards, but if we all keep pulling in the same direction, those of us that really care, I think we'll continue to keep this Pride March moving forward. And I'm looking forward to the events. This obviously Norfolk and Virginia Beach are the two that I've attended many times, my wife and I both. So I'm looking forward to it. I appreciate y'all's work. And yes, you've got an ally in me, as well as everybody up here. So thank you.
He comes down and gives us the thing.
Greg, you didn't say don't blink and I blinked.
Okay, please.
Well, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, thank you. On behalf of Hampton Roads Pride and our entire LGBTQ plus community, I want to sincerely thank you for your Pride Month proclamation and as Councilman Berlucci said, for being the first mayor to do so in Virginia Beach. We are fortunate that Hampton Roads Pride is just one of the many organizations that support and uplift our queer community here in Virginia Beach and in the region. We are joined in other aspects of service by the LGBT Life Center, Hampton Roads Business Outreach, the Kalos Coalition, Southeast Trans Resource Center, and many others who provide much needed services to folks in need here in our community in Hampton Roads. This public recognition of Pride Month means a great deal. It affirms your support for equality, inclusion, and the dignity of every resident of Virginia Beach. Your leadership sends a clear message that Virginia Beach is a city where diversity is valued and where all people, regardless of who they are or who they love, are welcome and respected here. We're especially excited to invite all of you and the community at large to join us for Pride at the Beach on Sunday, June 22nd. We're very proud of how this event has grown, and that is made possible by your support, by the city's support. The city of Virginia Beach, I'm happy to say, is our largest supporter now, outpacing some of our other support for Pride Fest. You are our largest sponsor, and we are deeply grateful for that. This year, there are some new elements to Pride at the Beach that we're pretty excited to share. We will kick off the event with a march on the boardwalk. As our rights are challenged this year, we feel it's even more important this year to give our community an opportunity to stand up and be visible. And we'll do that this year with the city's support of this march along the boardwalk, starting at 17th Street Park and ending at the event at Neptune's Park. We also will have a great lineup of entertainment at the event, ending with our headliner at the end of the evening is Big Frida. So a much larger name for the entertainment than we've had in previous years. We're also very excited, as Michael shared already, that the Stonewall Sports National Tournament will be held here in Virginia Beach next year. I think this is a great testament to the work that we all have done together to demonstrate that this is an inclusive city that values its queer residents and is a destination for folks to come from other parts of the country. So we look forward to welcoming queer and allied athletes from many other cities as they come to participate in this tournament. Thank you again for your continued support, and we look forward to celebrating with you nearly every day of this month as we have events all over the region. There are actually 2 others happening right now as I'm here, where we have a sunset cruise and a karaoke night going on right now, or other members of our board are out supporting those events. So it is a busy month for us, but we're happy to have a variety of events that happen in Virginia Beach and culminate with Pride at the Beach on the 22nd. And I'm very happy that Ginger is here with me tonight, and she's going to say a few words as well.
Yeah, welcome, Ginger. How you doing?
Jeff. Thank you, everyone. It has been amazing to be here for every single proclamation. Thank you so much, Mayor Dyer, and to City Council. The words that Michael shared and that Jeff shared they pretty much sum it all up. As the chair of the Human Rights Commission, we work toward keeping all marginalized people, making sure that their rights are not violated. And so this has been a good continuation of my work from Hampton Roads Pride to the Human Rights Commission. And I just thank you all so much.
Oh, thank you both. God bless you and appreciate you coming. Take care. See you on the 22nd. All right, moving on now, proclamation from the Migraine and Headache Awareness Month. I'm going to ask John, Anya, and John again. Come on up. Dr. Whitakus, are you there?
He's not able to make it. He got called out of town.
Oh, listen, not a problem, but welcome. And I'll tell you what, speaking as a healthcare profession, it's groups like yours that bring awareness to so many people out there trying to do some incredibly good things. And for that, I thank you. Okay, hang on 1 second. Okay, whereas headache disorders, including migraine, cluster headache, new daily persistent headache, and other neurological headache diseases affect more than 40 million Americans and over 1.1 people worldwide. Whereas headache diseases are among the leading causes of disability globally. And whereas estimated 4 million Americans live with chronic migraine, experiencing symptoms 15 or more days per month. Whereas veterans and military personnel experience a higher rates of post-traumatic headache and migraine due to traumatic brain injuries sustained in service. And whereas headache diseases place a severe economic burden costing U.S. companies over $78 billion annually in lost productivity and healthcare expenses. And whereas stigma and misinformation have historically stifled research, innovation, treatment, and public awareness. Therefore, I, Robert M. Bobby Dyer, Mayor of Virginia Beach, do hereby proclaim
June 2025, Migraine and Headache Awareness Month in Virginia Beach, and I call upon all citizens, healthcare professionals, and policymakers to support awareness, research, and improve access to care for headache diseases. Okay, I'll write down. Simplify, brother.
We appreciate the opportunity to present, for you to present this proclamation of awareness of migraines. It is a debilitating disease. It's often very quiet. People, if you know if somebody gets migraines, you know how reclusive they can be and how painful it is. And if you don't, you just think it's a regular headache, and it's really not. It's an issue. I've been working with migraine prevention for the past 20 years, and I had the honor of being a community leader for the Association for Migraine Disorders, and particularly for June 21st, Awareness Day. It's called Shades for Migraines. And if I may, I'd like to present everyone with a pair of sunglasses for the shades of migraine. May I?
Oh, sure.
All right. And here we go. I'll start at this end, if I may.
Oh.
Sorry, Jersey boy.
He's a jarhead, too, so we get along. Oh, thank you. You got it.
You cause commotion. They're very nice. They're UV protected. But I think you missed something.
So we should get a picture with all of us with sunglasses on. Yeah.
All right.
Nice. Yeah, see? Good.
All right, here we go.
Here we go,
here we go. Let's put them on just for. Can we get a picture with everyone on it? That'd be fabulous.
I can't see anything.
I know. They work well.
Just don't vote like.
Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. God bless you, man. That was good. Okay, Madam Clerk, no speakers even on the agenda?
No, sir.
No speakers. Okay, we can go ahead and do the consent agenda. Madam Vice Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and members of council, everything is on consent tonight. We have a very lengthy agenda. Short agenda. Under ordinances, number 1 is the ordinance to authorize the acquisition of an agricultural land preservation ARP easement from Jeffrey A. and Mary Ellen W. Kroll, 78 plus 0.26 plus or minus acres, the issuance by the city of its contract obligations in the maximum principal amount of $893,610 and transfer funds to purchase U.S. Treasury strips. Number 2 is the ordinance to authorize temporary encroachment into a variable width city-owned drainage and impoundment easement at the rear of 1133 Pond Cypress Drive, maintain an existing variable width wooden deck and landscaping, construct and maintain 36.57 foot wooden bulkhead with 14 wooden sides and associated connecting cables. And that's in District 9. Number 3 is the ordinance to accept and appropriate $2,729,769.06 from the Virginia Office of Children's Services to the FY 2024-25 Human Services Operating Budget for a Children's Services Act program.
Open a public hearing on planning.
And this one is for a recommendation for withdrawal. And that's Don Fedorovich, Christina M. Sequet, for a conditional use permit, Ray Home-Based Wildlife Rehabilitation Facility at 6365 Colby Way, District 7. Move for approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, let's open the vote.
The vote is open. By a vote of 10 to 0, you have approved the consent agenda as read by Vice Mayor Wilson.
Okay, if we can go on to appointments.
Yes, sir. Under Active Transportation Advisory Committee to appoint Sally McMahon, Colin Nides, his high school student. Reappoint Melissa Ye Lin Chung. The Arts and Humanities Commission to reappoint Ashley McLeod. The Bayfront Advisory Commission to reappoint Reese Longwater. And the Board of Zoning Appeals, Building Code Appeals, to reappoint Steve Sonkin. The Clean Community Commission to reappoint Miles Pullman. Commission Policy Management Plan, Joy Rios. The Eastern Virginia Medical School Authority to reappoint Preston White. The Hampton Roads Planning District Commission to reappoint Patrick Duhaney. The Health Service Advisory Board to appoint Dr. Howard Weinberg. The Historic Preservation Committee to reappoint Aubrey Swain as a high school student. Housing Advisory Board to appoint Quincy White. The Independent Citizens Review Board to appoint Alexandra Wood. The Open Space Advisory Committee to appoint Jeremy Wing. And to reappoint Cooper Stewart, high school student. Parks and Recreation Commission to reappoint Maureen Langford, high school student. The Process Improvement Steering Committee to reappoint William Almond and William Coley. Public Library Board to reappoint Robert Covington, high school student. Social Service Advisory Board to appoint Suzanne Perrier. Stormwater Appeals Board to reappoint William Brunke, Thomas Dillon, Lynn Moon. And the Tidewater Community College to reappoint Matthew Stink. And the Virginia 250 Committee to appoint Suzanne Camden. Move for approval.
I'm sorry, Vice Mayor, under the Active Transportation Advisory Committee, I did not hear you mention Michael Norino as to reappoint as well.
Okay, and Michael Norino.
He was the last one on that list. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, both of you. Thank you. Okay.
The vote is open. By a vote of 10 to 0, you have appointed those as read by Vice Mayor Wilson.
Okay, thank you. Is there any unfinished business? Any new business? Okay, we'll adjourn to open mic.